electoral decisions. And as Kulveer said, the wheels did come off that bus a bit, because you had various candidates in uproar about it. We had Brexit Party regional Twitter handles saying this is an outrage, we weren't consulted. There are potentially legal proceedings by those who gave their money over to the Brexit Party in the form of deposits to stand, who are being told that they're not going to receive a refund.
They may have had hired teams.
They may have financial obligations as a consequence. Exactly. So really quite extraordinary week, yes.
Do you think this has helped Boris Johnson, Kulveer, the Brexit Party, for all their bluster? They were one of the most outspoken critics of Boris Johnson's withdrawal agreement. They felt it was a betrayal. They felt that it was the worst thing to happen to any sensible leaver. Do you think Boris Johnson ultimately has had good news with the Brexit Party standing down in those 317 seats? Important, though, to say that perhaps those seats, that the 317 seats, will now be uncontested, let's say, with the Leave contingency. But where Boris Johnson needs to gain seats, which is the Labour heartlands, the Labour Leave seats, he will still have to fight the Brexit Party. So has Nigel Farage done him a favour or not?
Yes, this is good news for the Conservative Party. That, the Brexit Party was cannibalising part of their Leave vote. If the Conservative Party is the party of Leave, what does the Brexit Party do to its electorate when it also says it's the party of Leave? Now, the Brexit Party seems to stand for a hard Brexit. That's what it is about. And I think by taking that off the table, it leaves a clear run for any party that is saying, well, we're going to have a Leave proposal here, which is what the Conservatives are saying and Boris Johnson has been saying. But I think it also makes it better for all the parties, because they will be standing in other seats. But I think now they've got a difficult message to get across, as Naomi and I are saying. Nigel Farage not standing as a leader. He doesn't look like a democratic political leader. He feels that he's making arbitrary decisions that the electorate will not be able to keep up with as well. I think there'll be confusion out in the broader country about what is happening with the Brexit Party. And it'll be very difficult for them to get that back onto the straight and narrow, their message through to the electorate.
So, do you not worry that now the Conservative Party, their identity has now all of a sudden been intertwined with the Brexit Party? So all of a sudden in those Leave constituencies where the Brexit Party is standing down, then a vote for the Conservative Party is almost like a vote for the Brexit Party, might be construed as that.
I think that would be a problem if it wasn't so clear that the Prime Minister had worked on a withdrawal agreement that he's now got, that he wants to deliver. So when he says get Brexit done, he means through this vehicle, this withdrawal agreement, not a no deal, not a hard Brexit, that withdrawal agreement. So that's defined for the Conservatives and for Boris Johnson. The problem for the Brexit Party is now they don't have a message, because if they're not fighting in seats where the Conservative parties are saying to leave, effectively they're aligning with the withdrawal agreement. That means you must be happy with that withdrawal agreement if you're not fighting that. Therefore, why are you fighting in other seats? Their message is unclear, and I think that's going to come through in how people respond to them.
Naomi, you at Best for Britain, you're doing extensive work on the ground, constituency per constituency. The Brexit Party, have they done Boris Johnson a favour at all? Or does the fact that they are still contesting those Labour Leave seats, the seats that Boris Johnson really needs, the fact that they're still there on the ballot paper, does that give Boris Johnson a bit of a problem still?
On balance, it probably helps him. But what we're modelling at the moment with our data at Best for Britain is the impact of where votes go when a party isn't standing. So we know in 2017, when UKIP stood down in hundreds of seats for the Conservatives, I think it was just slightly less than 50% of the UKIP votes transferred over directly to the Conservatives. So we certainly can't make an assumption that all Brexit Party votes, if the Brexit Party isn't running a candidate there, transfers naturally to the Conservatives. Some of it will stay home, some of it will go to the Conservatives, and some of it will break to Labour. There are a sizable chunk of Brexit Party supporters who are sort of anti-establishment, anti-elitist, and would vow never ever to vote for people that they consider to be very, very different from them socioeconomically in the Conservative Party. So we're still modelling all of that. On balance, it probably does help the Conservatives, but not as much as you might fear. And you certainly can't sort of add up their average 9% vote share nationally onto the Conservatives and infer from that there will be an absolutely rip-roaring landslide.
Now, we'll talk about tactical voting later on in the show. What I've always, and you two have got much more experience in this field than I have, but the idea that you're standing candidates everywhere, and people feel that's what national parties do. The Labour Party does that, the Conservatives, there's no question of them standing down candidates for other parties. But does it happen that people, even though they stand candidates, they don't really put their weight behind those candidates, and then sometimes it's referred to as paper candidates.
Yes, of course it does.
So how much of that are we expected to witness in this election?
Significant, as we always do. There are a few factors here. So one, in order to be allowed to spend the national limit that the Electoral Commission sets for political parties, you have to be running a certain number of candidates. And so the Liberal Democrats, Plaid and Greens have done a deal under this banner called Unite to Remain, where they've stood down for one another in about 60 seats. Beyond that, were they to stand down more candidates, they may risk falling below the threshold of which they'd be allowed to spend the total amount.
I see.
So that is why big parties will try to, and even smaller parties will try to run paper candidates everywhere so that they're allowed the national spending limit, but they will then channel that into what gets referred to as target seats. And all parties do targeting. They don't waste resources where they really don't think they can win.
And I think that's a disappointing thing for me, because I've been up close and personal in general elections. I've stood in one where
Where did you stand?
Oh yes, 2005, the great constituency of Makerfield, and they did not return me as their MP at that point. But
you got nominated.
I was selected to stand.
How much did you lose by? Go on, save me from looking it up.
Did you save your deposit?
I did.
There you go.
I've put some context to it. It was a seat that had been 99 years Labour.
Right.
The then Labour Party chairman, Ian McCartney, was the sitting MP there. He'd been there about 18 years, and he had about a 20 million majority. And I came back with my deposit, maintained his majority, but got I think just over 5,500 good burgers of Makerfield voted for me, which I was very proud about. But I chose to fight a campaign, and I could have been considered a paper candidate because, CCHQ would be saying, don't waste your time there, because that wouldn't be a seat in that election, or probably many elections, we would overturn. And so large parties don't put effort into seats that they know they're not going to be able to turn the majority, although that's changed in recent elections because of the vast swings we've been seeing. But historically, they haven't. They've been quite strategic about which seats they would target, the marginal seats, as we all know, within the range of being able to turn them from one colour to another. Mm-hmm. And therefore, those are the ones that effort and resources and people are focused on. Even if you're standing in a different seat, you'll be asked to campaign in target seats to help make a difference where you could possibly change the actual result.
I think, and to be fair to Nigel Farage, that is one of the reasons why he mentioned that he couldn't stand more candidates down, because that would have affected the spending that the Brexit Party could spend. Your messages are coming in thick and fast. Here are some of the answers we've got already. And what is the most important issue facing the country? Tony on Facebook says the NHS. We've got Colin on Facebook saying it's agriculture. Discordian on YouTube, watching us live streamed on YouTube, says poverty and the lack of opportunity due to the Tories giving our taxes to the rich. SM on YouTube says Brexit for now, and post-Brexit is going to be immigration. We're going to talk about immigration later on in the show, but thank you for your message. And Steve on Twitter says Brexit. So actually, from all the messages that we're having so far, I've just picked a few there. Brexit not the foremost issue right now, and we're going to talk about this after a quick break. Keep your thoughts coming in. What's the most important issue for you now? And also, what does Get Brexit Done mean to you? 0344 499 1000 is the number you need. You can tweet us at Talk Radio. You can text the word talk followed by your message to 87222. And you can watch us live streamed at Twitter, on Facebook and on our YouTube page. We'll be straight back after this.
This is Talk Radio. The Alexis Conran Show on Talk Radio with The Times and The Sunday Times. Know your times.
Book your seat this November for the chance to win some amazing football prizes with Hyundai. Go to football.hyundai.co.uk and register to test drive a Kona, Kona Hybrid, Tucson or Santa Fe from Hyundai's range of SUVs, and you could win an unforgettable football experience, including a VIP trip to Madrid to watch Atletico take on Villarreal and tickets to top Chelsea games. Book your seat. Find out more at football.hyundai.co.uk. 18 plus, terms apply.
You're trying to leave the house, but not before you dress the kids, pack their lunch and track down that missing shoe. So forgetting to turn the heating off is easily done. But it's nice to know with Hive Active Heating, a Which Best Buy, you can turn your heating off from wherever you are. And by never having to heat an empty home, you could save up to £120 a year on your heating bill. Search Hive Heating to buy now. Hive services require broadband and Wi-Fi. Terms apply.
Unlimit the tunes you love this Christmas on Vodafone, with Spotify Premium included on our unlimited data plans with entertainment. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Available on Unlimited and Unlimited Max Plan. Maximum download speed applies to unlimited plans. Speed and coverage may vary. Full terms on Unlimited and Entertainment at vodafone.co.uk/unlimited.
Talk Radio Traffic and Travel.
In Greater Manchester on the M62 eastbound between junction 18 for Simmouth Island and 19 for Hayward, we've still got a lane 1 closure for emergency repairs. In the West Midlands, the A38 Bristol Road is closed at Selly Oak following an accident at the Langleys Road junction. In Gloucestershire, the A417 at Maysmore, that's closed because of flooding between the A40 over roundabout and White Hart Inn. And just a reminder, the M4 remains closed both ways in Berkshire between junction 6 for Slough and junction 8 for Maidenhead for bridge demolition work this weekend. I'm Michael Page.
It's one small step for man, one giant shop. Sorry, 2 giant shops a month at 10% off with the new Tesco Club Card Plus. Oh, and double data from Tesco Mobile, all for $7.99 every month.
New Tesco Club Card Plus. Value you can't stop talking about. Subscribe online today. £200 max spend per shop, in-store spend only, club card app required, exclusions apply, double data only on pay monthly, home from home destinations. First payment payable up front, subject to status, see online for details.
Across the UK, online and on DAB Digital Radio. The Alexis Conran Show on Talk Radio.
Welcome back to Talk Politics with me, Alexis Conran, here on Talk Radio with The Times. Know your times. With me, I have CEO for Best for Britain, Naomi Smith, and former Transport and Digital Advisor to Boris Johnson, Kulveer Ranger. We are receiving your tweets and messages thick and fast, so please keep them coming in. You can even call the show. 0344 499 1000 is the number that you need. I'd like to know what is the most important issue for you in this election, and also what does the phrase "get Brexit done" mean for you? We've got one here, a tweet here from Veronica. Kulveer, I think this is aimed at you. Conservative guest, I reckon that must be you, says Boris has a deal and therefore it's not a hard Brexit with the no deal option. But isn't it true that the PM has said that he won't extend the transition, which means that the deal could still crash out with a no deal?
Well, yes, people want to see milestones and deadlines to getting negotiations done, things moving, etc., which is why the Prime Minister was so focused on the end of October, for example, as a date to achieve
what happened
something.
To that one?
Well, he got things that nobody thought he could get. He got the withdrawal agreement open. He got it changed. He got the backstop taken out. He got change that everybody was saying won't happen. Prime Minister, what's the point?
Some may say that what he managed to do is go back to an offer that had already been rejected by the previous Prime Minister, Theresa May, because she said in the House of Parliament, no Prime Minister of this country would back any withdrawal agreement that would put a border in the Irish Sea. I mean,
some might say that.
That option was on the table and was rejected.
You might say that, Alexis, but he also got an agreement that the entire Conservative Party is now standing shoulder to shoulder with. They're all agreeing, including the ERGs.
But Veronica's point is very important, and I think it's an important question in this election, that if... a lot of Conservative MPs lost their whip and subsequently have stepped down as MPs. We point to Ed Vaizey and Barad,
different reasons,
Dominic Green, all for different reasons. But what caused 21 Conservative MPs to lose the whip was their support for the Hillary Benn amendment, and that was a concerted effort to to prevent no deal. And this withdrawal agreement still has a no deal element in it.
And also, I think the point that the listener's trying to make is that you cannot say that this deal is not hard Brexit, because it is harder than Theresa May's Brexit, and that was pretty hard if you want to look at the spectrum of sort of still staying in the single market or the customs union, you know, sort of Norway options, etc. Neither of those two deals were on the softer end, and Boris's deal is harder than May's, and I think it would be unfair to categorise it as anything other than hard Brexit. It's just not a catastrophic crash out no deal Brexit, which of course, if the transition period isn't extended, and it would need to be extended by July, and that means there's probably only 5-6 months to arrange an FTA, and those typically take over 5 years on average with the EU, so it could of course still end in no deal Brexit.
But as the Prime Minister says, you know, we're in alignment at the moment. This deal is not a deal. The trade agreement that needs to be agreed with Europe is not like other trader deals where people aren't in alignment and they have to find middle ground.
Kulveer, I'm really glad you've said that.
Oh, God.
No, I'm really glad you said that. There's a face of panic at the moment. No, I'm glad you said that, because that has been said all along. That, look, we want a free trade agreement. We're already in alignment. This is not going to be like Canada or Japan, the average of 7 years. And that's just 7 years to negotiate it. There's another few years for it to be implemented. So everybody has said, but this is going to be quicker because we're already in alignment. But there lies the rub. The whole problem with the Brexit Party, the Spartans, the ERG, the Leavers is alignment.
Yes.
They don't want alignment, because the closer we are aligned, the more we keep things the same, which is the reason why this can take a very, very little time to agree. The more alignment we keep, then the more frictionless trade we have, but then we are aligned. And the more aligned that we are, the less we can do outside the EU because of the alignment. Yeah. That was the big problem. Nigel Farage wants when they say clean-cut FTA, they don't want alignment. In fact, that's what they were very, very happy about, that the alignment got taken out of the withdrawal agreement and put in the political declaration, which is non-legally binding. So if we are going to have a quick FTA deal, it's going to only be because we're not really changing much in our relationship. And if we don't change much in our relationship, then the leave contingently becomes Brexit in name only, as Naomi says.
But I think at this point, it will be a case of setting a benchmark for where we are and then where people want to go. I think one of the problems we've had for 3.5 years, Alexis, although not trying to not discuss the point of alignment, is that there hasn't been enough movement forward in where people can see things being gradually decided. We've kind of got stuck in one rut and not moved on. And you're asking the question, what does it mean to people when people hear get Brexit done? I don't think they hear the words meaning, yes, Brexit is finished and it's over with. They want progression. And as someone who's worked a long time in major infrastructure and delivery of big programs, what you look for is milestones along the way that people can point to as change points where agreements are put in place, which is why we have these points and why people should stick to them. The problem was 3.5 years, nothing really felt like it moved forward and people have become frustrated. July, yes, a point where we'll need to get agreement. End of the year of 2020.
Will Brexit get done before Crossrail?
Listen, you know what? That's a really personal question. As someone who was deeply involved in the agreement of getting Crossrail through, I'm hugely disappointed, and I have to say, there's a huge responsibility on the Mayor of London, whichever mayor it is at the time, to deliver these programmes. So that sits there. We won't go into that.
Let's not. Let me read you this tweet whilst we're on the Brexit, the Brexit subject, and what get Brexit done means to you. Snow Elephant on Twitter says it's simple. No foreign court can overrule in our internal affairs. Our laws are our choice and making. We are free to choose who may and who may not enter the country. And parenthesis, and who needs to leave. Most important, we can release of duties those who govern us in an election. Now, thank you for that, Snow Elephant. However, you've just described EEA, for example, a Norway deal. That totally befits what Brexit means to you. Now, I don't know whether you're a fan of the Norway deal. Perhaps you can send us another tweet.
Norway isn't.
Norway isn't a fan. But do you see what I mean? This whole idea of get Brexit done. How can you get something done which means different things to different people? And going back to your point of what get Brexit done means to the general public. I think there was a poll done not too long ago that there was a lot of misunderstanding that this withdrawal agreement was the deal. That actually a lot of the British public, because they're not nerds like us, feel that once we're out, that's it, we're done, we're finished. We can go on to talk about hospitals and policing. Very few people understand that actually this is what was meant to be the easy bit.
Yes, yeah.
This was meant to be the easy bit. Then we go to the negotiation. Naomi, I guess it's fair to point out that Get Brexit Done maybe plays well with the public, but doesn't really describe the situation. Labour also have a big problem because their Brexit policy is, some may say, a little confused. I think it can be described quite clearly, but what they're essentially doing is they're going on the doorstep saying, vote for us and we'll tell you what our Brexit stance is going to be after we get your vote.
Yes, just ever so quickly coming back to the point about Get Brexit Done. I think people just want it to stop, like make it stop.
Please make it stop.
And I think, therefore, they want to get Brexit gone. And the listeners that tweeted in and messaged in about the issues they care about in this election, somebody said agriculture, somebody said NHS, poverty. It's because we want to be getting on with talking about those issues, the things that actually matter to everybody's day-to-day lives. Climate change, schools crises, all of these are things that the opportunity cost of Brexit means we're not talking about them, we're not tackling them. There has been precious little parliamentary time dedicated to them. So people just want it gone rather than done. And I think the point that you were making earlier is that if we go ahead with leaving on, through this agreement and then going to negotiate a deal, that's it bleeding on for much, much, much longer. Whereas if we call an end to it, we have a final say and people say, actually, current deal with the EU versus what's on the table here from the thing that Boris Johnson has negotiated, and decide to stay, then we could potentially move on and start talking about those other issues. But in terms of Labour, I think it is quite difficult for them on the doorsteps. It is much, much clearer and more coherent than it was previously. And that's, a great relief because I think Remainers across the country are pretty divided across the different parties on the sort of progressive left. And they were very happy that Labour had come to a better policy on this. But I think it is tricky because when you're standing in the middle of the road, you can hit by traffic coming in both directions. And on the right, you've got the Conservatives and Brexit Party saying, very, very clear, this is what we want and we're going to leave. And obviously you have the Liberal Democrats, the Greens and Plaid advocating for a sort of much stronger Remain position and in the case the Lib Dems revoke. But Labour do need to get, I think, pithier at their messaging because we need them to do well in this election.
I think that's going to be impossible for them, unfortunately. I think Labour, you said standing in the middle of the road, it feels like they're running into the road with a blindfold on and not really being able to say to the electorate one thing or the other. And we try to sort of tone down our language about how people will feel on the doorstep. Labour candidates on the doorstep are embarrassed. They're struggling because they can't give an answer to where Labour will be. Yet they're going to go and negotiate another deal. What will that deal look like? And then when they come back with the deal, they don't know whether they're going to support the deal or not. This is a nonsensical position for a major political party to be in on the issue, as we are hearing, that the whole country wants, when you knock on that door, the privilege of asking them for their vote, being clear with them what you're going to give them. I've been in that position. If I was a Labour candidate, I'd be embarrassed. I'd be really struggling to give a view across to what Brexit means to me. The biggest, most important point to people in this election.
Well, you say that, but I have to say that a lot of the messaging that we're getting here at the moment, and I realise this is a sort of a very small sample, but Brexit doesn't seem to be at the forefront of people. Certainly the people who are contacting the show. We've got, it doesn't have a name here, but poverty actually harms people. Brexit stroke the EU is a secondary importance. What does Brexit mean? What does Get Brexit Done mean to you? Commander Snowflake, that's a good name, on YouTube, says, what getting Brexit done means is whatever Parliament thinks it means, but it doesn't mean leaving. It's just a childish word.
But coming back to Naomi's point, and between Snow Leopard and Commander Snowflake here, it's about finding the political air to do other things. That's why people want to see Brexit moved on. It's not Brexit in its own right. Brexit links on to all other things. Actually, the most important thing to underpinning all the things that people point out, whether it's a strong NHS, whether it's welfare reform, whether it's building homes, to be fair, from a centre-right perspective, is a strong economy. If we have a strong economy, we have good unemployment, we have tax revenue that can be used by the state in an appropriate way, that's how a country goes forward. Now, if Brexit is impacting economic performance, if Brexit is slowing things down, it's having an impact on the economy, which is having a knock-on impact on delivering all the kinds of services and progression that the people, as you're quite rightly saying, want to see.
And that's why all of the government impact assessments that have been done show that any form of Brexit leaves the economy worse off.
Yeah, I mean, that it is based on your conditioned to believe that Brexit could be beneficial
in the long term, potentially, but
for the economy.
No short to mid term.
The basis of this argument is the referendum result. We have to be clear about that. There was a referendum, a result that is then being implemented, and we move on that basis. We can have the various hypotheses of potential impact, Project Fear, is it a good thing, is it a bad thing?
But Kulveer, the stagnation... Doesn't it come down to, you've made a decision, and that was fair enough, but then 3 years down the line, as more details are emerging and as more information comes to light, perhaps you may realise that you've made the wrong decision. Are you saying that just because we made that decision in 2016, we shouldn't be allowed to change our minds, or we shouldn't be allowed to diverge from that one day in 2016?
This is a question that comes up a lot.
Yeah.
We all hear that we should have another opportunity to think again. Now we know what we know now against what we didn't know then, and so on and so forth. In life, we all make decisions.
Yeah.
And once we make those decisions,
you have to live with the consequences.
Exactly. Yeah. I'll wear this jumper today. I'll buy that car. I'll go for this job. Things change after we make decisions.
But you try those things on before you actually purchase them.
Well, really,
you do a test drive.
You take a job, and normally it's not quite what you thought when you get there.
But you could quit your job.
We all have to make decisions that we have to take responsibility for, and then move on from that. This was a decision that the country took, and now we're making it the best for the country of the decision that was taken as a democratic result.
So it's the least worst.
Really underpins.
It's the least
Well,
worst.
I think there is a positive out of this. Look, I don't want to have the arguments about whether it should be Brexit or not, which way we vote in the referendum. But the country needs to move forward in a positive way. And that's what the politicians are elected to do. Yes, exactly.
The problem needs to be solved. But I think... and perhaps it is the fault of whether you want to call them Remainers or Leavers or whatever we're classing ourselves now, that I think people are still looking for answers as to how they will be better off. And we've gone from pre-2016 chat of how amazing the utopia would be to now being told, well, look, it's not going to be as bad, and perhaps we can have some sort of alignment. Those glowing sort of...
No, that's not what the Prime Minister has been saying, or what the Conservative Party has been saying. They have been saying about a future of Britain, which is about international trade, being at the centre of that.
Okay, so I guess the central question, and something that I've been asking behind this radio mic for the last 2 years, is I don't understand, and I'll put my hand up and go, I'm not a business person. I am very naive when it comes to business, but I don't understand when you want to sit around a table as a country of just under 70 million people, how we are going to get a better deal and we are going to set the rules that we want versus an America, a China and an EU trading as a bloc. I don't see how we get a better deal and we don't end up following rules set up by markets that are bigger than us.
I can understand that, but I think actually that it's different. It's a different way of going forward. The country... And the UK is one of the biggest, most powerful economic forces in the world. We are top 5 or 6...
the sixth largest economy in the world.
And we have the capability to negotiate, to manufacture, to deal with other large economies and get good deals. Now, if you're part of a bloc like we were of Europe, yes, there were certain advantages. There's, economies of scale. There's various things we were selling to a market. But we also had disadvantages. We were a voice amongst the other 27. We had to then mitigate what we wanted to do. So, there were pros and cons. there is a positive result that can be achieved. And I think we have to present the positive to people and answer the kind of concerns that you're talking about, Alexis, because you can make the best of this. I'm not saying it's a negative situation around Brexit. It's a positive situation if the country believes it and we then go forward in that direction. If we continually want to haul ourselves back to a path which
just wish hard enough. You know, I think if blame lies anywhere from the Remain side, it is with the centre-right, and it's with George Osborne, who really did stoke up Project Fear in talking about the fact that there would have to be an emergency budget immediately after the referendum. That was complete nonsense, and that has been used to be levelled against Remain ever since. And what we have seen is that listeners, their weekly shop has gone up. They will know this. They will know it in their pockets. Everything has got a bit more expensive, and we've narrowly escaped recession. The figures that came out last week for Q3 of 2019 are buoyed up by the fact that there was growth in good numbers in July, but August and September were retracting back, and this is yet again the effect of huge amounts of stockpiling happening before the threat of no deal, and then people releasing those and spending as a consequence. So there is Project Reality here at the moment, and that is that we have had EU staff leaving the NHS and going back because they feel that this is a hostile environment, and we have seen prices go up immeasurably.
We're going to take a quick break. Before that, in our question to what is the most important thing for you in this election, Mr. Chris says on Twitter, Brexit may not be the number one concern of many voters who listen to talk radio. Well, I think you'll listen for the rest of the week, and it is. But it very much is to blue-collar workers in many of the marginal seats around the country, especially Midlands and the North. The London bubble needs to get on those doorsteps. Thank you for your tweet there, Mr. Chris. You can continue watching us live streamed on Twitter, Facebook and YouTube. Please carry on sending your messages. I will read them out as and when I can. Or give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number that you need. We'll be straight back after this break.
Countdown to the election on Talk Radio.
The manifestos, the mandates, the mother of all radio stations.
Up to the minute breaking news and instant reaction. Your election station, Talk Radio. The Alexis Conran Show on Talk Radio with The Times and The Sunday Times. Know your times.
Philip Schofield here. I love that with WeBuyAnyCar.com you could find out what your car's worth in 60 seconds. Then you can get back to doing whatever you were doing, like your hedge trimming. You can't see, but I've sculpted a flamingo mid-flight, and I'm pretty pleased with it. To find out how much your car's worth in 60 seconds, enter your reg number now at WeBuyAnyCar.com.
Admin fee may apply. For more information, see WeBuyAnyCar.com/info.
At Morrison's, we've expanded our free-from range and we've crunched the price of many of your favourites. Like a 500-gram bag of free-from fusilli pasta way down to 60p. That's half price. And a 4-pack of free-from flapjack slices way down to 80p. Price crunch at Morrison's. Majority of stores while stocks last. Online varies. Fusilli was £1.20, flapjack was £1.40.
People's Postcode Lottery costs £10 a month, and £30,000 will be won every day by players in the December draws. Join in with your postcode at postcodelottery.co.uk before midnight on the 21st of November to play in the December draws. PPL manage lotteries on behalf of good causes. 16 plus, conditions apply. Play responsibly.
Someone's knocking at the door. Somebody's ringing the bell.
At DFS, Autumn-Winter Collection sofas are up to half price. Many are guaranteed to be delivered before Christmas. Until Monday, get extra savings on selected sofas. DFS.
Talk Radio, traffic and travel.
In Hampshire on the M27 westbound, we've still got a lane 1 closure because of a breakdown at junction 11 for Fareham. In Bristol, the M49 northbound is closed this weekend between the M5 junction 18 to the Prince of Wales Bridge for works, and there's also a closure on the M4 both ways in Berkshire between junction 6 for Slough and junction 8 for Maidenhead, due to reopen tomorrow morning. In the West Midlands at Selly Oak, the A38 Bristol Road remains closed northbound because of an accident between the Berenstar pub and the Battery Retail Park. I'm Michael Page.
O Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo? Deny thy father and come to the shops with me. We can get 10% off 2 big shops a month with the new Tesco Club Card Plus. Oh, and 10% off your favourite Tesco brands, including F&F in-store every day. All for $7.99 a month.
New Tesco Club Card Plus. Value you can't stop talking about. Subscribe online today. £200 max spend per shop, in-store spend only. Club card app required, exclusions apply. See online for details.
The big bald eagle of broadcasting is on Talk Radio.
Get him off. I'm not interested in listening to someone who's not going to listen.
The legendary James Whale.
Only a nutcase would come up with an idea like that.
The radio presenter who isn't afraid to tell you what to think.
I am sick of this. I think our speed limit on our motorways is far too low. It needs to be 80 miles an hour at least.
Cometh the hour. Cometh the Whale.
You can come on the air, you can have your say, because this is a free country at the moment.
The James Whale Show.
Tomorrow night from 7 on Talk Radio.
Across the UK, online and on DAB digital radio. The Alexis Conran Show on Talk Radio.
Welcome back to the show with me, Alexis Conran, here on Talk Radio. With me, I still have Naomi Smith and Kulveer Ranger. I want to move us on to some of the other incidents of the week. Immigration is... we moved on to that topic. We've gone through the sort of the promises, the fiscal promises. I did think it was quite funny last week we talked about that 1.2 trillion figure that the Conservatives had come out. That's without even having looked at the Labour manifesto. I think they quickly sort of brushed that up under the carpet, and Sajid Javid refused to take part in a debate with his opposite number, John McDonnell, this week. Again, I just thought that was a strange decision at the moment, where you really kind of want your politicians to come up and have those debates. We've got the debate to look forward to on Tuesday, but let's put the chancellors aside for a second. This time it was the talking about immigration. Priti Patel came up to say that, again, we're going to go for a points-based immigration system. As far as I know, we have a points-based immigration system for non-EU migrants. So I don't know whether she is meaning that obviously we're going to roll that out for everybody, but she refused to be drawn into any sort of number, as did Jeremy Corbyn when he was interviewed on the subject matter of immigration. Kulveer is setting a number, a lesson that the Conservatives have learned not to do, seeing as every single number they've set for immigration they have failed to meet.
I think all politicians have realised that setting a number is really something that comes back to bite you, basically, on immigration. And because so many roads lead to immigration, you know, whether it is, NHS, or whether it is the fruit pickers and seasonal trade that we're looking for sometimes because we need different kinds of people for different things. I think there's a flex that you need in immigration that needs to be managed, which is what the Conservatives are talking about. You know, this whole talk about controlled immigration actually has been around for a very long time in political general elections, because people felt, you know, under the Labour government, when there was no control, when we couldn't actually put any kind of figure on what was happening, or figures that were put forward were soon found to be so hideously inaccurate, that eroded public trust in what they felt was going on in terms of immigration. And I think that's what we're talking about, public trust. And so if the public feel that there is a system that can at least tell them who's coming in, who's going out, what's happening, and there's an element of control, that's what people look for. Whether people actually want, is it 10,000, is it 100,000, is it 200? I don't think the public are looking for that figure. They're looking for the message that says, we understand what's going on.
But before I go over to Naomi, YouGov asked voters if they wanted UK to continue with freedom of movement after Brexit. 56% would support continuing freedom of movement with the EU. 28% would oppose, and 16% don't know. That was YouGov on the 14th of November.
Yeah.
We have, and I have to say, because it was breaking news today, from last night, Labour have now shelved the conference promise to maintain freedom of movement. Instead, it will renegotiate migration policy with the EU if Britain votes to leave in the second referendum. It seems that even though the British public, when asked, don't really have that much of an issue with freedom of movement. Well, we can only go by this one YouGov poll. For political parties, it seems to be quite toxic. It's an area that you can tell, a bit like the NHS, it's dodgy ground.
freedom of movement and immigration are not quite the same thing, because freedom of movement is about immigration. And so when you're asking people about freedom of movement, the question you're asking them is, do you want to give up the right, just not the choice, but the actual right to go and live and work and study and love and retire in 27, however, I think it's probably, it's higher than that, isn't it? Sort of 30-something other countries that freedom of movement applies to. Or is what matters to you more giving up that right and limiting those other people from being able to come here? So, you know, there are two sides of this coin, and you're not just simply drawing up the bridge behind you, you're also therefore foregoing your right to go and study and live in those places. And lots of people, even Leave voters, they don't want that for their children. They do like the fact that their child could go and study abroad or take up a job in Berlin or whatever, or maybe even they themselves want to retire to Spain in the way that generations before them have been able to do very, very easily. You mentioned that we only have this one YouGov poll to go on. That's not actually true. Ipsos Mori have been polling the immigration question for decades. And what's very interesting is when you look back to just before the 1997 general election, and you looked at how many people cited immigration as a concern, it was, you know, not even 5%. When you fast forward to 2016, and you've had successive governments of all shades fail with their macroeconomic policies to invest sufficiently in the infrastructure around everywhere, you know, whether that's transport, whether that's upskilling deindustrialised areas, whether it's providing sufficient housing or sufficient good quality housing around the country. It is no surprise then that people feel, oh, actually, you know, I'm feeling hard done by, I've got poorer, the rich have got richer, our areas declined, our high streets declined, and what's the thing that they see that's different? Or there are more people that don't speak English as a first language around me, or there are more people with a different colour skin to me, and it becomes a very easy thing for populist politicians to point to and go, well, it's their fault, and that's not true. It's about having a very lax approach to immigration that our successive governments have failed to manage population growth properly. And if they had done, I don't think we would have had the sort of immigration concern that we did in 2016 into that referendum vote.
Isn't it the truth, and I'm not expecting either of you to give me a definitive answer on this, but the way I see it in my rather simplistic view, is the good news is that we have more people employed than we ever had before. So this means that pretty much all the people who can work are working, but we still have massive shortage of occupations. I was talking to a GP on the radio show yesterday. 40,000 nurses are still vacant, nursing jobs. 10,000 doctors are still there.
Construction sector. 30% shortage of occupation, even with free movement.
We're talking about, you know, the need to build more housing. We don't have enough people in construction. So the idea that your first step is to just actually turn that tap off, stop free movement of people, just seems to me absolutely bizarre and unsustainable. And actually, I would think that someone like Priti Patel and Jeremy Corbyn and Diane Abbott all know this. So why are they not being straight up with the British public and saying, look, if you want things to actually work and you want us to grow as an economy, there is just not enough able people to work to fill in the job vacancies. Yeah. We need to bring people in.
I think, you know, Naomi's highlighted some of this. There's a number of issues that could get conflated in the minds of the public around immigration, economic migrants, asylum seekers, you know, and various other things that lead to that tension, that saying we want more control on this. And I think that's the challenge. We've all seen the challenges of, you know, refugees coming in, and how do we manage that? And people bring that into immigration. They bring that into border control and a sense of, do we understand what's happening? Economic migrants, our requirements for skilled labour, for labour to help certain industries, is also a fundamental part. And people see that. I think people value that. And it's why all the politicians will struggle to answer the question about net migration. Do they want to see it go up or down? Because they can see all the different challenges that there are, and they can't give a binary answer to this. It's a more complicated scenario. And I think Naomi's right that over, you know, the last few decades, the challenge has been that people in tough economic times do see immigrants as a point of concern. But I say that at this point in this country, I don't think that is where people's hearts and minds lie. I think people see the value that migrants... I'm obviously a son of migrants to this country. I think people see what immigration has done for this country. I don't think it polarizes as much as it did, say, a decade ago or even before that. But I think now what people look at is how are we going to get the right people, the right skills coming in, and confidence around a government that controls that.
I think there's also such a horribly transactional element to that sentiment, because it's also about who you've fallen in love with. We've all got friends and family who probably have a spouse or a partner who is from another country. And, there have been some truly sort of heart-wrenching stories about families that now are terrified of being broken apart.
Yeah.
What Remainers want doesn't hurt anybody, really. They are mostly very cognizant of the fact that globalisation has not worked for everybody, and we need to do a lot more to help those areas that have been hurt by it to a certain extent. But what Leave and most people within the Leave camp advocate by virtue of wanting to end freedom of movement is potentially going to tear families apart. So yes, of course, there's the economic argument for immigration, which is very, very easy to make. You saw when sterling declined very rapidly in the immediate aftermath of the referendum that actually a lot of workers downed tools on construction sites and went home.
But here's some
there's
of your...
also the love argument.
But this is the beauty of being live streamed and having an engaged listenership. You have, this is not named, but if we had less migrants, we would have more resources. Simples.
No, it's not zero sum. Yeah. The pie just gets bigger. Most migrants are economic contributors. We have a net economic benefit, which means there is more to spend on all of our public services, not less.
Another one here, skilled workers welcome, but we should train our own first. And I remember having this conversation with an employment lawyer who talks a lot about migration. And again, it makes no sense. If you have someone who's looking for a job in Glasgow and a job vacancy in Kent, you're not going to fill that with the same person. So this idea that we train our own first, again, doesn't work on the ground.
I agree.
We should train more people.
I agree that doesn't work in terms of Glasgow and somewhere else, but we do need to invest in lifelong learning.
Of course,
and I think that's something that industry is doing.
But I think people are taking that for granted. I think people do assume that we're doing that already, and it's a surprise to them that we're not.
And we're not. And when you look at countries like Germany, where you've got a very different culture between the relationship between business and the local community, there you've got employers, whether they're national or regional or localised, that will have a brilliant relationship with the local training institutions, whether they're the universities or the technical colleges. There is a huge amount of money that flows from those employers into those training providers, and you've got this really lovely culture between the two of them. And we don't have that here. We have a business community that expects the state to fund training and for training institutions to pop out people who are ready-made for the workplace.
That has been changing. That has been changing because we're in now another industrial revolution, the economic technology revolution. And I think industry, businesses are realising, through apprenticeships, through internships, through graduate training, lifelong training, because it's not actually just at that early part of the career. Actually, it's more the middle part, latter parts of career that a workforce is available but needs to be reskilled. And I think actually many businesses are realising that and doing that. But we have to increase that. And I think that's a fundamental point that should come through in, hopefully, manifestos. And I think some of the parties are talking about lifelong learning, because the workforce that we have now, as we say, people who use phones to do business jobs and create startups and various other things, that needs to grow, that entrepreneurship, that spirit. And we need to develop that. The government needs to work with industry to help to do that. It's something that has always been a challenge in previous industrial revolutions. We're right in the middle of it now, and it's something that needs to be picked up by political parties.
But you can't simply train a doctor overnight, or a nurse, or a midwife, or a tech professional, or or a construction worker, an engineer. This will take time. So to your point, Alexis, you can't just turn off the tap from Europe and expect business to overnight be able to suddenly upskill all these Brits. And when you take construction, I think that's a very interesting one, because there housing crisis has led to a lot of the feeling of disenfranchisement around the country. In areas like London, that is a housing shortage. In other areas of the country, it's a quality of, we've got too much poor quality housing. And we've got a construction sector that even with 30%, even with free movement, has got 30% shortage occupations. We just don't have enough people to build the homes that we need without migrants, and even with them we don't. And the construction sector has tried to upscale Brits. It's spent a huge amount of money doing outreach into schools and colleges and trying to convince them that you can earn as much as a site engineer on a big project as you can in the City of London as a banker, and it's just not something that young British people have wanted to go into in the kinds of numbers that we need them to.
I'm not necessarily going to agree with that. I've seen what big industrial projects do when you do, for example, things like Crossrail, Thames Tideway Tunnel. You can set up academies, you can draw engineers into that, young engineers, new engineers, people into those skills. I think the housing challenge has partially been about skills, but it's more been about the approach of home builders and the right policy that's required to unlock land, keep development going, rather than it being about skills. I'm really concerned if we put that down to a skills shortage. There has been a failure on the half of the builders here.
Yes,
to get those things going.
And I would agree with Kulveer on that point, that there are three factors of production: land, labour and capital, and labour is only one of them. We do need to unlock land, but that is a whole other programme. But
here's the example of how, as we began this conversation about immigration, how immigration, migration, job shortages all get piled into one. And here's your example. I have to say, it's got a Brexit Party logo on the Twitter picture, so you know where this is going to go towards. Silver Spoonfish says, immigration. This tiny island is already overcrowded. We need controlled immigration, and free movement must be stopped immediately. Let's choose who we need. So there you go. It's all lumped into one. There's too many people on this island, apparently, even though we've got shortages for people to be looked after, social services, NHS and the rest. Well, too many people here already. 0344 499 1000 is the number you need to let us know your thoughts. You carry on watching us on Facebook, Twitter and YouTube. At Talk Radio is the handle that you need. It is the 11 o'clock news next.
This is Talk Radio. The Alexis Conran Show on Talk Radio with The Times and The Sunday Times. Know your times.
Let me ask you, when do you believe you get the best deals? Black Friday? Why wait? The best deals are now at Carphone Warehouse. Save an amazing £60 on the Samsung Galaxy A40, just $14.99 a month. How about a Vodafone SIM-only deal for an incredible £15 a month with 10 gig of data? Get great deals today without the wait at Carphone Warehouse. Samsung A40 on select 24-month contracts. SIM Vodafone on select 18-month contracts. T's and C's apply. Visit website for more details.
Oh my god. OMG. Is she okay?
Yeah, she always does this. Her Uber Eats just arrived. She ordered McNuggets, so...
Oh. Shall I get the door then?
Probably best, yeah.
McDonald's delivered, exclusive to Uber Eats. Get excited.
Gosh, can we put the heating on?
Sorry, it's broken.
Can I play some tunes on my phone then?
Yeah, afraid not. Play CDs though.
This car belongs in a scrapyard.
I know, but I get nothing if I scrapped it.
Actually, you can get at least £2,000 off a new Ford for it.
Really?
With Ford's new for old scrappage scheme, you can get between £2,000 and £4,250 off a new Ford car if you scrap an eligible vehicle with us responsibly. Also, there's 0% APR representative on Ford options. Ford. Together, we go further. Search Ford Scrappage. Exclusions apply. Contracted and registered by 31st of December 2019 at participating dealers. Age and ownership criteria apply to scrappage vehicle. Subject to status. Free post Ford credit.
On DAB, online and on your mobile. All the latest election news as soon as it breaks on the station that's going to the country. Talk Radio.
Across the UK, online and on DAB.
Talk Radio. On the hour news headlines.
Good morning, I'm Daryl Jackson. Labour's pledging to offer free dental checkups for everyone in England if it wins the general election. It's estimated the party's plan to get rid of charges would cost around £415 million per year. Shadow Health Secretary Jonathan Ashworth says the costs put many people off going to the dentist.
More and more people are being admitted to hospital because of problems going wrong with their teeth, or indeed not taking their children to the dentist. So what we're announcing today is we're going to invest more in dentistry because people's oral health is absolutely crucial.
The Conservatives say checkups are already free for those who can't afford them, and these plans force taxpayers to foot yet another bill. Prince Andrew says he was at Pizza Express on the night he's accused of having sex with a 17-year-old girl. Virginia Roberts-Giuffre says she met the Duke of York at a nightclub in London before they slept together in 2001. He's been speaking to Newsnight.
Absolutely no to all of it.
Why would she be saying those things?
We wonder exactly the same, but I have no idea.
He also said he didn't regret his friendship with the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, who died in prison earlier this year. Large parts of the country are still trying to clear up after flooding and have been warned the problems could continue until Tuesday. 61 flood warnings urging immediate action is required are in place. And 1,000 bikers in Northamptonshire are taking part in a ride in memory of Harry Dunn, who was killed in a head-on collision in August. The suspects and Secoulis claimed diplomatic immunity and returned to America. Onto the weather, cloudy with rain across southern Scotland and northern England, mostly dry and bright in the south.
Talk Radio Sports Update.
Gareth Southgate feels his young squad have shown they can deal with the pressure of playing for England. They'll hope to finish their impressive Euro 2020 qualifying campaign with a victory in Kosovo this evening. Southgate's team sealed their place at next summer's tournament with the 7-0 thrashing of Montenegro at Wembley on Thursday night. Wales will qualify if they beat Hungary on Tuesday after their 2-0 victory against Azerbaijan set up a winner-takes-all clash in Cardiff. Croatia have already claimed top spot in Group E to qualify. Northern Ireland's slim hopes of qualifying automatically ended as they drew 0-0 with the Netherlands in Belfast. Captain Stephen Davis blasted a first-half penalty over the bar in what may have been Michael O'Neill's final home game in charge.
Talk Radio. Across the UK, online and on DAB Digital Radio.
Talk Politics on Talk Radio.
Welcome back to the show with me, Alexis Conran, here on Talk Radio. You're listening to Talk Politics with The Times. To be well informed, with me I have CEO for Best for Britain, Naomi Smith, and Kulveer Ranger, former Transport and Digital Advisor to Boris Johnson. Keep your messages coming. 0344 499 1000 is the number that you need. We're asking the question, what is the most important thing for you in this 2019 election? What are you going to base your vote on? Is it going to be the NHS? Is it more police on the ground? Most people are in contact with us are talking about bigger issues, other issues than Brexit, poverty, the NHS is coming up, agriculture came up. So keep them coming in. I'm going to read through most of your messages before the end of the show. Remember, you can watch us still, I believe, live streamed on YouTube if you go to our YouTube channel. But you can get in touch with the show at Talk Radio via Twitter, or you can text us, text the word talk followed by your message to 87222. Important issue for me, says Paul on Twitter, an electable leader for the Labour Party. I don't see how you can change that by your vote, but point taken, Paul. Thank you. Let us look into, and this is going to be tricky ground with the Purdah rule, so we're all going to be careful here. But let us look into tactical voting. That seems to be the thing, especially from the Remain campaign, this idea that people need to vote, in the words of the tactical voting associations or organisations, people need to vote in the best way they can to prevent a Conservative candidate from being elected. I guess the problem with most people, and I would say most people, the people who marched in the People's Vote campaigns, etc., they all came from different political parties. In fact, all political parties were represented. But is there confusion because there are a lot of tactical voting organisations out there, very often contradicting each other?
Yes.
Right,
it is unfortunate that there are so many. It's probably helpful if we sort of just wind back a little bit to what tactical voting is and why it's done. And that's effectively because we have a first-past-the-post electoral system, and that means that a majority government can be elected on a minority vote share.
Yeah, I think last time we had a 30% of the vote gaining 55% of seats.
Certainly in 2005 you had Labour elected with 55% of the MPs on just 35% of the vote share. Yeah. That's not that uncommon. And I think that we will probably see a higher vote share for the Remain parties in aggregate at this election than we will for the Conservative Conservative Party. I don't think they're going to get more than 51% of the vote themselves.
Has that ever happened, by the way? You're both political geeks. Has any party got more than 50% of the popular vote?
I don't think so.
Yeah,
I don't think so.
We may have to go back into the annals of
of two-party Whigs and Conservatives. But most, obviously, modern democracies around the world, including in Northern Ireland, Scotland and Wales, have long since abandoned first past the post. But it's what we've got. And so what you've effectively now got in this in this general election, which is being posited as a referendum, because it is asking the electorate one question. No, come on.
I've got to be fair. I've got to be fair.
The election was called off the back of not having sufficient numbers.
Because there was a blockage in moving on with...
the issue of Brexit.
On the issue of Brexit.
Now, of course, the other parties will talk... All the parties will talk about their manifestos and try and claim that there are other things that they're going to do once elected. But to all intents and purposes, the reason why we are having this election now and not when it was scheduled to be under the Fixed Term Parliaments Act in 2022 is because of Brexit. However, what we've got then is a situation where you're asking the question of the country about their views on Brexit, but Remain votes can be, of course, split across 4, maybe even 5 parties, and it looks like Leave votes are going to get consolidated behind one party, potentially 2, depending on whether or not there is a Brexit Party candidate standing where you live. Now, the Remain parties have done a little bit of work on this to try and stand down for each other in about 60 seats. Labour haven't been involved in that Unite to Remain pact, which means that it's up to the voters to do it for them, and that you have to do through tactical voting.
Can I ask you, on that note, that Labour have been accused by the Remain parties, so the Greens, SNP, the Lib Dems, that they haven't cooperated in this Unite to Remain type tactical voting. Is that a surprise? I mean, Labour is a national party, a bit like the Conservatives being asked to step aside. Nigel Farage in his video saying, well, I stood down in 317 seats. They could have done something for me. Could you expect anything to be done by the two big national parties?
Absolutely, of course, because it has been done so many times. When you look back to 1997, there was what we refer to in political history as the Lib Lab Pact.
Right.
And it was done under the radar. So it wasn't something that was done very openly and overtly.
Paper candidates.
Exactly. And then there was the situation where the Mirror ran a list of seats, in the week of the election day saying, these are the ones that Labour doesn't think they can win. And that was giving permission to Labour voters who read the Mirror, who live in those seats, to vote Liberal Democrat in that election.
This is terrible for the electorate. Okay, it's confusing, it baffles them, electoral pacts done under the table, deals. This is why the major parties won't do this, because it sends a really poor message to the electorate that says, when you vote, you don't know where your vote's going, or we're trying to get you to vote one way to get a different result. That's not what voting is about. And I align it with almost like fancy football league, where when you support a football team and you start getting involved in something else, your loyalty, your support for a movement, not where people are, a movement, sits with your vote. Now, if you want to vote for something else, vote for something else. But people need clarity.
Yes.
Elections should be about clarity. And this is where the left trying to have various pacts, various alignments, fractioning, even not being able to agree.
The right have done it, and the police are investigating. The police are having to investigate whether or not.
Those allegations from Nigel Farage, I think you wouldn't want to bring up in terms of what they're.
No, but they are being looked into by the Metropolitan Police.
Well, they have to, but those are, as we said earlier, where the Brexit Party found itself this week. The wheels have come off.
But look, you had UKIP doing a pact for the Conservatives in 2017, whether or not the Conservatives were overtly involved in it. Everybody knew that Farage was going to do something to try and help.
Those allegations,
but they did. They did stand down in hundreds of seats for the Conservatives.
But that's up to that party to do that. It's not. It's doing it overtly. It's making it clear.
Kulveer, I look forward to you joining in the Make Votes Matter campaign for electoral reform, because what you're saying is quite right, that voters should have a very clear and simple choice before them and be able to exercise that. But under first past the post, if you are, say, a Labour voter in a very strong Conservative area, or a Conservative voter in a very strong Labour seat, your vote simply doesn't count. We do not have democratic equality in this country.
That's the system we've been using.
But what tactical voting is, all it's really saying is, it's a bit like you're a transport expert, but transport. You're waiting at the bus station and your bus doesn't turn up. Instead of just not travelling at all, you take the next bus that comes along that gets you 75% of the way to where you're going, and then you walk the last bit. That's all tactical voting is, and that's why at Best of Britain we've got getvoting.org to try and help Remainers decide who they should vote for in order to stop a Johnson majority.
There is an important question to be asked about all tactical voting sites and organisations, which is, are they transparent enough about their funding or their backers? You don't want a tactical voting site which is set up in order to push the Green vote or the Lib Dem vote or the SNP vote or whichever.
And as Naomi just said, to stop a party getting a majority, which is what their tactical voting is trying to do. Now, I would say the right, centre-right, should look at, do they want to get a Marxist, socialist, 1970s, government in place? And to stop that, they should vote for parties on the right. Actually, they should vote for the Conservative Party.
Well, of course, there are tactical voting sites.
But that's the other side of that conversation.
The first tactical voting site that was launched was Leave.eu. So the right do it anyway. They're doing it.
Why shouldn't the rest?
I want Naomi to answer my question about tactical voting sites being transparent about who's backing them and whether there are legitimate cases of them being set up to actually promote not just the prevention of a Conservative majority, but to promote a specific party.
Of the tactical voting sites that I've seen, most of them have a stated aim at the top. So ours, of course, is to stop Brexit. And at the moment, if you want to stop Brexit by any democratic means, that does mean stopping a Conservative majority at the next election. Others will say we are a tactical voting site to get the most number of Labour MPs into Parliament. Those, of course, have sort of similar ends, but they're sort of coming from a slightly different place. So I agree, we should all be as transparent as possible. It can be a bit difficult depending on the methodology that you're using. So some sites are just using 2017 vote share as their benchmark of saying, well, who was in second place last time? Okay, well, they're the best placed person to win this time. That we don't think is true because of how much the polls have shifted over the last 2 years, how, we've got different party leaders, etc. So some of us are using, and Best of Britain is using, MRP data, which is, this algorithm that has hundreds of thousands of points of data in it, as you couldn't easily just sort of put that on the internet for people to look at, because it wouldn't really make sense. But most of them are as transparent as they can be.
So again, treading carefully, because under Purdah rules, we can't be seen to be giving any particular candidate any sort of airtime without giving the rest of the candidates equal sort of airtime. But there are constituencies where, for example, there's a Labour incumbent. The Lib Dems were in third place, but on your website, you are advising for a Lib Dem vote. Some people will look at that and go, well, this makes absolutely no sense at all. By your reckoning, with Best of Britain, the number one aim being to stop a Conservative candidate from winning that constituency. If it's already Labour held, it makes absolutely sense to double down and keep that seat Labour, or indeed if it's Lib Dem held, to give your support to the Lib Dem incumbent, so to say. So what do you say? There's 2 or 3 constituencies, particularly in London, where it seems like you're supporting the party that came third in a general election, rather than the party that's either already there or in close second.
There is only one seat in London where it is currently held by a Labour MP, where our data shows that actually they've fallen behind over successive rounds of our data, and that the Liberal Democrats are now the much better placed party to take that seat. But in the vast majority of seats, we are still backing the Labour incumbent, because we think that they are, with particularly an incumbency bounce, the ones that are more likely to be able to hold on to that seat. And yes, there are some seats where they're currently Conservative held, where in 2017 the Liberal Democrats were in third. But if you take the point that the Liberal Democrats have gone from 8% to 18% nationally in the polls, and I think most people would accept that, and that they haven't grown 10% in every single seat around the country, and they've probably even fallen back in some places, then in order to be polling at 18% nationally, they must have had a far bigger leap in some seats in order for that 10% national to have held. So we are particularly seeing in leafy metropolitan very strongly Remain areas, maybe even some where there is a large Jewish population, the swing to the Liberal Democrats has been far larger than it has been nationally, and that would account for why the MRP data suggests now that if you want to get rid of the Conservative MP, or you want to hold that seat, actually it's going to be the Liberal Democrats that you need to back. But the vast majority of our recommendations, over 65% of them, more than twice as many for any other party, are for the Labour Party.
But do you not think that you're...
I'm completely confused by that perspective, I've got to say, because if the Labour Party's premise is that they will renegotiate a Brexit deal, which continues Brexit, they will then go to the electorate on that deal and do, what they think needs to happen. But they are progressing with Brexit. That does not mean they are in a no Brexit position. So recommending, as you're saying, Naomi, that, your organisation doesn't want Brexit to happen, why would you be recommending a party that actually is going to progress with the negotiation and then look to get that deal either agreed or disagreed, and to a point where Brexit still goes forward?
If you're a Leaver, back Labour. You heard it from Kulveer.
But what I'm saying is, Labour Party is not the party of Remain. It's not the party of Leave. It's not got a view. But
it's the party that's offering the second referendum.
But you're saying your consistent view is you don't want Brexit to happen. So effectively, you're a Lib Dem policy group.
We're going to pick this up after the break. I've been shouted in my ear to take the break because we've got to play ads to pay the rent. Right. You see, that's how it works. 0344 499 1000 is the number you need to let us know your thoughts. You could tweet us at Talk Radio, as many of you have. Carry on watching us on our YouTube stream if you go to the Talk Radio YouTube stream. I've got to remind you that at 12 o'clock I'll be joined in the studio by Full Facts Will Moy. He is bringing with him all his research. He's been fact-checking all the electoral claims that have been going on this week for us all. And if you have any questions for Will Moy and Full Fact, give us a call and we'll make sure that he brings the answers with him. 0344 499 1000 is the number you need. We'll be straight back after the break.
Talk Radio. Contact Talk Radio. Call 0344 499 1000. Text Talk and your message to 87222. Texts cost 25 pence plus your standard network rate. Or you can tweet us at Talk Radio.
This is Talk Radio.
The Alexis Conran Show on Talk Radio with The Times and The Sunday Times. Know your times.
Book your seat this November for the chance to win some amazing football prizes with Hyundai. Go to football.hyundai.co.uk and register to test drive a Kona, Kona Hybrid, Tucson or Santa Fe from Hyundai's range of SUVs, and you could win an unforgettable football experience, including a VIP trip to Madrid to watch Atletico take on Villarreal and tickets to top Chelsea games. Book your seat. Find out more at football.hyundai.co.uk. 18 plus, terms apply.
Hey there, if you've got a flawlessly powdered nose for a bargain, there's 15% off fragrance and premium beauty at Boots, including Clarins Double Serum, which was £78, now £66.30. So gift like you get them at the What to Buy Someone Worth Pushing the Boat Out For, but not too far boutique. Offer ends 17th of November at selected stores and 18th of November at Boots.com.
At Lidl, we're big on those little reasons to be jolly, like our delicious Favorina all butter mini Stollen bites for just $1.99. and 6 deluxe mince pies for just $1.35. Big on a Christmas you can believe in. Now that's big on quality and always little on price. Subject to availability, selected stores excludes an eye.
It's hard to enjoy your daily yoga routine when your mind is on your next VAT return. But with QuickBooks, the new VAT Smart Scan technology checks for errors and reviews VAT codes for you. So your biggest struggle is touching your forehead with your ankle.
Search for QuickBooks. Perfect for making tax digital. QuickBooks. Backing you.
Talk Radio, traffic and travel.
We have delays on the M3 in both directions. The northbound side was closed between Junction 6 for Basingstoke and Junction 5 for Hook. The southbound between Junction 4A for Farnborough and 5 for Hook. That was to move a horse out of a broken down horse box. It's reopened now, but there are delays. In Hertfordshire, the M25 anti-clockwise, there are delays following an earlier broken down lorry between Junction 17 for Maple Cross and 16 for the M40. And in Bedfordshire on the M1 northbound at Junction 12 for Flitwick, we've got an accident that's currently blocking lane 1 of 4. I'm Michael Page.
O Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo? Deny thy father and come to the shops with me. We can get 10% off 2 big shops a month with the new Tesco Club Card Plus. Oh, and 10% off your favourite Tesco brands, including F&F in-store every day. All for $7.99 a month.
New Tesco Club Card Plus. Value you can't stop talking about. Subscribe online today. £200 max spend per shop, in-store spend only. Club card app required, exclusions apply. See online for details.
Outspoken opinions and decisive debate. The Alexis Conran Show on Talk Radio.
Welcome back to the show with me, Alexis Conran, here on Talk Radio with the Times. Be well informed. With me, I have Naomi Smith and Kulveer Ranger, and I'm soon going to be joined on the phone by Clive Lewis and Paul Scully. We're going to be speaking to them. And, of course, after 12 o'clock, we are going to have Will Moy from Full Fact in the studio with us. So please send us all your questions you want Will to answer. I think the best way, whichever side of the argument you're on, is to check your facts. Make sure that whatever you're basing your decision on is factually sound. And remember from last time, my advice to you is actually double check the facts that you agree with more than the facts that you disagree with. You don't want to be caught with the facts that you are basing your decision on being crumbling down. We talked about tactical voting. I didn't get a chance to ask you the question before we had to go to break. Do you not think that eventually you can't have that much tactical advice? It all needs to focus and sort of be united in one voice of advice. We've seen essentially the Leave side actually grin and bear it. We talked about Nigel Farage saying, well, I don't like the deal, but hey-ho. The Leave side seem to have got their act together. The Remain side still seem to be bickering.
In an ideal world, of course they would. And if our politicians and political parties have failed us on the Remain side, then it's up to the voters to unite. There are too many tactical voting sites. There always are at every election. And my, big hope is that we would all find one to rally behind. Ours, of course, is the one with the largest sample set at the moment. It's based on a poll of over 46,000 people that is then MRP'd. And we've got a situation where when we look at the three tactical vote sites that are actually advocating sort of stopping Brexit, when you analyse their agreements and differences, there are actually only 9 seats where they disagree at the moment. So 9 out of 650 isn't bad.
Let's look at what's coming next. We've got quite a few weeks left of this campaign. The Conservatives seem to be consistently polling ahead of Labour, although I read in one of the papers today that there are reminders within the Conservative camp that they are in a worse position than they were at the same point in the 2017 election in regards to numbers. So I don't think there is a sense of we've got this in the bag, we can all relax. Kulveer, are there any pitfalls for the Conservatives in the upcoming, we've got about 4 weeks left?
Many. Look, there's a long way to go. It's the early skirmishes, manifestos yet to come out.
But is there anything, like, for example, there's a Jennifer Arcuri documentary coming out on ITV tonight where I've seen some clips. They are embargoed, so we can't talk about them. But it's fair to say it's going to be pretty explosive. Are things like that able to affect Boris Johnson, or is it all priced in with Boris?
I think, we get to a point where people say Boris is Boris. They've heard much of this before. I don't think there'll be any new news coming out about
And do you think he can trip himself up? The Labour Party seem to be quite buoyed by the fact that they believe their man, Jeremy Corbyn, on a head-to-head with Boris Johnson on Tuesday night on ITV will do quite well.
I'm glad they think that, because I'd like to see, where they're the Labour Party in that bunker where they're sitting there in a darkened room.
Why do you have to call it? Oh, come on, Kulveer.
No, this
You're
is
better than that.
They're just not in the bunker.
They're not sitting there in a bunker.
Well, they're in
waving a red flag and reading the little red book.
Well, yes, which they threw over to the previous Chancellor, if you remember correctly. John McDonnell has his copy of the little red book. This is not jokes. This is the reality of Labour mindset, of the people who are writing this manifesto, the people who are looking to run this country, who don't...
You have no evidence that they're sitting in a bunker
not the bunker, but they're sitting in a room doing that, which they've actually done yesterday. It's all over the news.
My question,
that they've been sitting there deciding their manifesto.
So you're in a head-to-head, Boris Johnson versus Jeremy Corbyn. You are fully confident that Boris Johnson can do the trick.
I would back Boris all the way against a socialist 1970s communist who sees the world in the way that Jeremy Corbyn sees it, who can't back certain
What about
things
his
about
policies, though?
His policies will echo what he believes in, and we'll see that in the manifesto. The sense of giving things away for free, and the 1.2 trillion pounds that we talked about earlier.
I wouldn't go there if I were you.
But when I sat there and listened to John McDonnell at last year's CBI conference, where he addressed the conference, read out a list of pledges which has only been added to, I totaled up 750.
But I think the
billion.
Institute of Fiscal Studies has said that you are now pledging promises at exactly the same price as the 2017 Labour manifesto, which you called outrageous.
So we're talking about the now coming, this leadership and what they're going to do now.
I think it's all about public trust. It's something that Kulveer's already mentioned. Public trust in politics is incredibly low, probably at an all-time low. And I think what we know of, you asked about whether or not the Jennifer Arcuri stuff is priced in with Boris. I think it is for his backers. It's something that is sort of straight out of the Steve Bannon playbook. It's all about, your virility and your manliness and if you've, gone out there and sown your seed and treated women badly.
This is terrible. I've got to pause there. That's not what the playbook whatever you're talking about. This is not what Boris Johnson is about, or anything in which way he would lead that kind of conversation.
What we do know is that he is polling poorly with women. Women are very worried about a Boris Johnson premiership, and I think
how you portrayed the Prime Minister there.
He does a very good job of portraying himself in that light. I don't need to do it for him. Women are very untrusting of Boris, and I think things like the interview tonight will probably shift some even further away from him.
I'd agree it's a trust issue, but I think the country doesn't trust a Jeremy Corbyn leadership, and I think that's where we're going to get
sure, but that is your opinion, and that is also seems to be the majority of the output coming from the Conservative campaign is all centred on Jeremy Corbyn. They're doing a very good job of avoiding some of the bigger issues and actually not talking about, for example, we had the A&E waiting times, scarier than that, but there was also the diagnosis times, the cancer treatment times, non-essential operation times, which are frankly abysmal after 9 years of government. But I suppose it's quite easy to attack Jeremy Corbyn. But Naomi, in your view, in a Jeremy Corbyn, Boris Johnson debate, do you think that the Labour Party are justified in feeling that their man is going to be able to perform quite well in that?
I'm not here to commend any one party. I'm here as a cross-party campaigner that wants Remain. I don't have strong views on that particular head-to-head. I do think it's a bit ridiculous to not have a woman there. When you look back to 2017, it was different. You didn't just have binary single-choice debates. So I hope that they all get to participate in the other broadcasted debates. I don't know to the extent to which, though, voters are particularly turned off or turned on by these debates anyway. Most normal people aren't going to watch it. It's people that probably already made up their minds that have seen it. But what is interesting is how it all gets written up afterwards. So while very few people actually watch it, it's generally who is perceived to have been the winner that then grabs the headlines, and then that goes on to be the thing that has more impact on.
I would say actually a lot of people do watch it. A lot of the public do tune in, no matter what we think about them not being that engaged in politics. People do watch the main set pieces, the big debates. I'm finding it interesting. I don't think it's because she's a woman. I'm finding it interesting that the Liberal Democrat leader has not been included. That is something that should be looked at. But these debates are big national set pieces that I think the electorate do look at.
I was talking yesterday, before we go to break, I was talking yesterday about the need perhaps to make the campaigning appearances on broadcast media official. A bit like in the US, all these things are set in stone. The candidates do these debates, everything. There's no bartering, there's no horse trading when the Prime Minister's office or the leaders of the opposition office would try and set their own terms to get an advantage. Would you both agree that it's about time now that we, at the Electoral Commission or a body comes in and says, this is the procedure in an electoral campaigning? We have debates over here, that's going to be done over there, these people need to take part, they need to take part.
I think it's a good aspiration, Alexis. I think the problem is, as we found with the Fixed Term Parliament Act, where we're only meant to have these elections every 5 years,
yes, but
things change, and then you find the dynamics of what needs to happen. I think it'd be good if there was a certain amount of agreement that said in a general election campaign, now, here we go, the major leaders would have a debate, but then what would that mean about major party leaders? Which parties would be major parties at that point, and how would you define that? And you could get into some really nebulous conversations about who would be included, or does everybody get included?
Well, you have those conversations and you come to some sort of agreement, but leaving it to the last minute where people can choose and start horse trading depending on where they're at in the polls, I don't think that's acceptable.
No, I agree. We need to have much more clear guidance about it. That goes for guidance and regulation that covers all aspects of elections, not just this. I think our current regulations are just not up to scratch for modern day political campaigning at all. And even in terms of broadcast rules and where do they end and begin? Podcasts, for instance, at the moment, I think sit outside Ofcom regulation on of that. Broadcasting on social media, which is where the vast majority of people are consuming their news anyway. So I do think we just need a substantive overhaul, of which televised debates is probably just one element.
I mean, my jaw dropped last week and the forthcoming segment at 12 o'clock when Will Moy was in the studio. We were talking about political advertising, and political advertising on social media is not overseen by anybody. It's not subject to the Advertising Standards Authority, so any political party can put out any sort of information, any sort of film. It's not fact-checked by anybody. They can say whatever they like, and it can just spread like wildfire. I think it's about time we had a serious thought about how we run these campaigns.
I think we will. I think we'll look at all these channels, all the new technology, all the medium. But let's be honest, propaganda has been there from the year dot. Since politics began, there's always been propaganda, there's always been messaging and that kind of information flow. Whatever we do, it will still come through. One side will take one view of an issue, another will take another. But this thing is evolving, and I think I do say that the Fixed Term Parliament Act would have given us time to evolve in this new world of different types of campaigning. It hasn't, because we've had rapid fire election, referendums, etc., which has brought it to a head. And I agree with Naomi, it does need to be looked at so that we're not in the situation, give it in another 6 to 18 months' time, maybe, when there's another general election.
Please don't.
If that might be
well, they're already going to have to break the Fixed Term Parliament Act to prevent us from having elections in December for the foreseeable future, right? Because otherwise, if we start on this December, it's already broken before we started. Wonderful to see you both. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
CEO for Best of Britain, Naomi Smith, and Kulveer Ranger, former Transport and Digital Advisor to Boris Johnson. You're free to go. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. For us, we're still going to speak to Paul Scully and Clive Smith, and we're also going to have Will Moy joining us in the studio from 12 o'clock to answer your questions. Will Moy from Full Fact charity checking, fact-checking service. Get your questions in. I've got plenty of your calls, your tweets coming in, which I will read out. 0344 499 1000 is the number you need, or you can tweet us at Talk Radio.
Across the UK, online and on DAB, the Independent Republic of Mike Graham on Talk Radio.
Blasted rhetoric from the Banana Republic.
Join me, the Reverend Mike Graham. Revolutionary, rebellious, rebuilt, rebranded.
Dangerous mid-morning debate with the great dictator.
The Independent Republic of Mike Graham.
Tomorrow morning from 10
on Talk Radio.
Parties contesting the general election include the Conservatives, Labour, Liberal Democrats, the SNP, Plaid Cymru, Green Party, UKIP and the Brexit Party.
Across the UK, online and on DAB Digital Radio. The Alexis Conran Show on Talk Radio.
Welcome back to the show. The Alexis Conran here on Talk Radio. You're listening to Talk Politics with The Times. Be well informed. Coming up at 12 o'clock, we will have Will Moy in the studio from Full Fact. Get your questions in, and I can put them to Will. He will have done his homework on what pledges we've been hearing this week and what has been promised to the electorate this week. And he's going to be doing a little bit of fact-checking for us. In the meantime, some of your messages coming through, keep them coming through, and also give us a call here, 0344 499 1000 is the number you need. I know that plenty of you have called in, and I will be coming to your calls in a minute. I've had Anonymous here. Alignment is a non-issue. You stay aligned where it's beneficial and diverge where there are opportunities worldwide. What's difficult to understand? I think this is going back to the conversation that we had about the free trade agreement being quick because we're already aligned. But I pointed out that the problem is that the more we stay aligned, the more unpalatable the free trade agreement will be to members of the ERG, members of the Brexit Party, to people who are leavers and don't want a Brexit in name only. And again, I understand your point that you'll pick and choose, but when you're dealing with a larger trading bloc, you don't really get to pick and choose what you like. So, for example, if the EU say, well, look, if you want to, excuse me, if you want to stay aligned with food and agricultural products, which actually a lot of our trade goes to, and we agree to that, well, that's going to create problems with our free trade deal with the US. So I appreciate your thoughts, but I think it's going to be a lot trickier than you think. Now, let's talk to a long-time friend of the show and Conservative Party candidate, Paul Scully, who joins me on the line. Paul, welcome back to the show.
Hi, Alexis. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you for joining me this Sunday, and appreciate for giving us your time. The Conservative campaign's now sort of a smoother second week. Got off to a bumpy start, I think it's fair to say. But this week things have been going well, apart from a few concerns, I guess. One of them I would like to draw your attention was the report that came out on the A&E waiting times. It's a pretty poor record after 9 years in government, isn't it?
I think one of the things that we need to do, we are putting more money into the NHS than ever before, and we're promising another 33.9 billion. But it's not just about money. It's you can have a race to talk about figures, but it's about making sure that that the money's going to the right places, that it's organised as well as possible. Mm-hmm. Clearly, there's loads more we can do, and there's lots of there's what I had Matt Hancock at St Helier Hospital recently. We were just talking about the way that actually building a new A&E facility would help remove duplication, extra maintenance costs, and these kind of things, and make the system far more efficient, which make that local trust turn it from a deficit into a surplus pretty well overnight because of that change. So it's those fundamental changes.
Is it difficult, though, Paul? And I appreciate it's a tricky question to ask, but is it difficult when you go on the doorstep to... you've been in government for 9 years. Is it difficult when you see these figures? And, the figures are quite dreadful of the waiting times, and not just the waiting times, but also the delay in non-essential operations, the delay, what's more concerning, the delay in cancer treatment. We all know that cancer treatment, you've got to take action straight away to prevent the worst from coming true. But when you go to the doorstep and people are armed with that information, how can you defend your record? I mean, the spending on the NHS that you gave me, I don't want to waste the time of sort of arguing whether it is or it isn't, but let's just say that it has been contested, actually, even though, yes, in real terms, you are giving more money to the NHS, just like you're giving in schools. In real terms, it just isn't enough for the NHS to function properly.
This is the fundamental issue about the NHS. It's about actually making sure we can keep up, not just with inflation and cost, but also modern medicine, because we're treating more people before, we're treating them in more complex ways before. We're putting a number of scanners across the country so that people can get that better diagnosis earlier on, rather than having to go to some distance for specialist equipment and those kind of things. So it is really about getting in before, getting in quickly, and that's why recruitment of doctors and nurses there's a record number of GPs in training at the moment, because you can't just turn on a tap and say, right, okay, we're going to have more doctors and nurses, and then suddenly they pop up in a hospital, in a surgery, these kind of things. It does take time. But I come back to the point that we had a difficult backdrop clearly 9 years ago in terms of the financial situation of the country, which is we've started to we've turned around pretty well. And the fact is that now we are able to put that extra money in, but coupled with the reorganisation. Well, no, I hate to use the word reorganisation because it sounds like a big mass thing, which isn't what's planned. It's just sort of, as I say, just making sure that it's spent as effectively as possible. Then that's got to be the way forward. But the NHS is always difficult to keep on the front foot with.
But I've had a message here from one of our listeners who's been watching us live streamed on YouTube. His name is John, and we asked the question: what's the most important issue for you in this 2019 election? We've had various things come in. Bizarrely enough, not as much Brexit as one would have thought. People are concerned with poverty, with hospitals, with agriculture. We had a message, but here's one that I'd like to put for you. The most important issue for me is MPs being transparent and accountable. A couple of questions on this. I'm sure you would agree that you want to be transparent and accountable. So here are a couple of questions. So the Prime Minister keeps going on, even though he's been informed that it's not strictly accurate to say that the Conservatives are funding the creation of 14 new hospitals. We know that it's 6 new hospitals, and 34 hospitals will gain some money to do refurbishments, build extra wings, etc. Why not lay off that claim when independent fact checkers have said it's just not true?
Yeah, but this is where you start getting into semantics. You start getting into, as you say, it's not as straightforward as, that's not true, therefore it's... So the example that I was giving you before is one of those 40 hospitals. It can't go... The 6 that are there is because they are shovel-ready. You can start digging a hole in the ground now. But the hospital I was describing to you, St Helier Hospital, has to go through the consultation for the public consultation for the NHS. So that will start in January, and that takes about 3 or 4 months. And then you've got to get planning permission. So it won't start for building for at least another 18 months. Yeah, for this it will be, but for that one I'm telling you, about 18 months, maybe 2 years. But the process can't even start that until they know they've got the money. That's the point. So they can't even start that.
But look, this is the conclusion reached by Full Fact, which is we have to come to an agreement where we have independent fact checkers actually look at the facts.
Oh yeah, but all I'm saying is this is a 20-year-old. This has been going on for 20 years. So actually, by the government saying, right, we're going to give you £500 million to build this hospital, that has now brought the end of the sort of beginning of the end to a 20-year-old problem. So I can't see anyone moaning about that, but we're not going to get the hospital for a little while.
But you realise that when people listen to the Prime Minister say 40 new hospitals, they're not going to look at the semantics of, well, actually, as Full Fact say, 38 hospitals have received money to plan building work between 2025 and 2030, but not actually begin any work. That is an important detail to someone expecting in 2019 40 new hospitals. If the Prime Minister said, look, you've got 6 hospitals coming now and another 38 to 34 hospitals between 2025 and 2030, that's a completely different message, Paul. And if John is concerned with transparency and accountability, this is exactly what he's talking about.
I think the problem is you can see the detail of these sort of things on in the NHS website, the government websites, and these kind of things. But you clearly can't go into chapter and verse about the status of all 40 hospitals and sites in a short radio interview and these kind of things. So. By necessity.
Then what you're saying is by necessity people go on headlines which are not necessarily, you can't necessarily stand up when you scrutinize them.
No, I think they can. I think you can. But
you're not building 40 new hospitals.
No, we are, but we're literally not doing it now. But we're not doing it now.
Yeah, but you might not be in government after 2025.
But that is the point of, that's how building works. That's whether it's a house or a hospital, you have to go through consultation, you have to go through planning permission, and then you have to work out where, you can't even take on a building contractor until you know you've got the money. You can't even take an architect until you know you've got the money. So clearly, all of these sort of things are never going to, there's your money, now get a shovel, why isn't it built, sort of thing. It does take months for the Six and years for the rest. And as I say, but from the example I gave you, and I don't want to go into the detail because it's my local one. I don't want to go.
Yes, please don't.
Exactly, for the fact it's a general election. But the point of that what I'm saying is that's the one I've had first-hand experience of, and it's unlocking a 20-year-old problem. It will still take a little bit of time because of process, because of bureaucracy, not for lack of will.
Paul, I'll have to ask you about, in your role as Deputy Chairman of the Conservative Party, I have to ask you about the allegations that have come to light this week between the Brexit Party and the Conservatives. There are some very, very serious allegations about promises, alleged promises to Brexit Party candidates to stand down in exchange of whatever the promises were, whether they were peerages or being given safe seats in Conservative areas. I know that the Conservative Party vehemently denies any such agreements. But it seems that the Brexit Party have doubled down. They are standing behind their stories to the point that we've reached the Metropolitan Police is looking into these allegations. What do you want to tell us about that?
Well, I'm not aware of any conversations for anybody that actually even got any power to do these sort of things, having conversations with the Brexit Party. I have no doubt that there are people at a local level that have spoken to people because they know them or whatever, they come, for whatever reason, possibly saying, are you standing or not in my local area, these kind of things. But in terms of the allegations that you are talking about and describing about peerages, safe seats or whatever, I'm not aware. I can't see that having happened, or because we've been really clear right from the beginning that we're not going to do deals. We're not going to do any sort of sense of horse trading. We are a national party. We're going to be standing in every seat, and the Brexit Party talk about trying to get Brexit done, but by standing against Conservatives and standing in some of the areas that the Conservatives can win, they risk getting the exact opposite of what they want. So Nigel Farage, I'm sure, doesn't want to be remembered as the guy that actually stopped Brexit and that allowed it to seep through his fingers, having been there at the beginning of the referendum. So
complete. You feel that as a party you've behaved honourably. There's no question of anything coming to light that people were offered sort of horse trading in exchange for stepping down.
I believe we've acted honourably.
Okay.
I see no reason. You've gone down that line.
Okay. We seem to be losing you there, but it's fine. Thank you very much, Paul. We had to leave it there anyway because we had to take a very quick break. But thank you very much. That's Paul Scully, Deputy Chairman of the Conservative Party and Conservative Party candidate there. We're going to take a very small break, but we'll come back with Clive Lewis, who's going to be waiting to speak to us at the other end of the line.
Across the UK, online and on DAB.
Your election station, Talk Radio. The Alexis Conran Show on Talk Radio with The Times and The Sunday Times. Know your times.
People's Postcode Lottery costs £10 a month and £30,000 will be won every day by players in the December draws. Join in with your postcode at postcodelottery.co.uk before midnight on the 21st of November to play in the December draws. PPL manage lotteries on behalf of good causes. 16 plus, conditions apply. Play responsibly.
Someone's knocking at the door. Somebody's ringing the bell.
Philip Schofield here. Question for you. Imagine you were buying a lovely new silk dressing gown. Would you trade in your favourite old bathrobe for a discount? Of course you wouldn't. So why part exchange when you switch cars? Wouldn't it be better to keep it simple? Selling with WeBuyAnyCar.com could put you in the driving seat to get a great deal on your next car. Enter your reg number now at WeBuyAnyCar.com.
Admin fee may apply. For more information, see WeBuyAnyCar.com/info.
You want to keep your savings for the things you love this Christmas, not a new boiler. We're with you. So our boilers come with 2 years interest-free credit, so you can keep your savings for a Merry Christmas. Plus, get a 5-year British Gas warranty, and we can quote by video call after work or weekends. Get a quote by the 30th of November and get £150 off a new boiler, or £450 off for existing home care customers. Search British Gas New Boiler. Conditions apply.
Talk Radio traffic and travel.
Heading into London on the M3 northbound at junction 1 for Sunbury. A lorry's having a tyre change, so lane 1's closed and there are delays on the approach. The M25 anti-clockwise between junction 25 for Enfield and 24 for Potters Bar has a lane 1 closure for a broken down car. In Bedfordshire on the M1 northbound, we've got delays following an earlier accident around junction 12 for Flitwick. And in the West Midlands at Selly Oak, the A38 Bristol Road remains closed between the Bear and Staff pub and the Battery Retail Park following an accident. I'm Michael Page.
It's one small step for man, one giant shop. Sorry, 2 giant shops a month at 10% off with the new Tesco Club Card Plus. Oh, and double data from Tesco Mobile, all for $7.99 every month.
New Tesco Club Card Plus. Value you can't stop talking about. Subscribe online today. £200 max spend per shop, in-store spend only, club card app required, exclusions apply, double data only on pay monthly, home from home destinations. First payment payable up front, subject to status, see online for details.
On DAB, online and on your mobile. Countdown to the election on Talk Radio.
The radio station that's always first past the post with up-to-the-minute election news, expert comment and instant reaction.
Countdown to the general election. Order! On Talk Radio. Outspoken opinions and decisive debate. The Alexis Conran Show on Talk Radio.
Welcome back to the show with me, Alexis Conran, here on Talk Radio with the Times. Be well informed. After 12 o'clock, Will Moy will be in the studio with me. If you have any questions that you'd like fact-checked, send them to us now, and we'll make sure that Will can have a look into them for us. He's already been fact-checking plenty of the claims and promises that a lot of parties have been putting forward this week. But it's great to have some of your questions. I know we had some left over from last week that I will put to him today. You can tweet us at Talk Radio to send us your questions, or you can text the word talk to 87222 followed by your message. You can carry on watching us live streamed on YouTube if you go to our YouTube page, and you can leave your comments there as well. They come straight to me here. Now, it's not Clive Lewis we're going to speak to. It's Steve McCabe, a Labour candidate from Birmingham. Steve, welcome to the show.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good to have you on. Second week of campaigning, things seem to have settled down. My question to you is, how have people been responding to the big promises that Labour have been putting across? Free broadband recently, massive commitments to spending on public services and the NHS. How has that message been going down on the doorstep?
Well, I think people are really worried about, I think the 3 areas where people have got their biggest concerns are the lack of police, the collapse in some areas in our schools and in the health sector. So I think, things like the prospect of free broadband is quite attractive to people because, I suppose it's just the idea that something that it's hard to get and suddenly it's going to be available is attractive. But I think, to be honest, people are much more concerned about the health service, and I think they really want to see investment in that.
And are people, when you knock on the doorstep and you are speaking to people, not political commentators, you're not being interviewed right now, do people ask you questions such as, OK, so how are you going to pay for all this? Where is the money going to come from? Do you have to tackle those questions on the doorstep?
Yes, I think sometimes people do sometimes ask things like that quite rightly. But, I think the truth is, whenever politicians talk in, billions or trillions, as the Chancellor's taken to doing, you might as well be going blah, 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 blah. I don't think people relate to that in the slightest. What they do understand is, kind of basic numbers. In the West Midlands, we've got 2,000 less police. And they know that because every time there's a burglary, they can't get a police officer to come to their door. So, people understand that. They know if they phone up for a GP appointment and they can't get one for 3 weeks, they know what's happening.
In your view, is the Labour Party more concerned about the idea of delivering on their Brexit stance, i.e. a second referendum, or is it to get into power to deliver the social agenda? And I ask because I think they're mutually exclusive. If Brexit is delivered, then everything changes. The ability of delivering some of the promises that the Labour Party are putting forward. To be fair, we haven't seen your manifesto just yet. Everything will be affected by our relationship with Europe. So what are you pushing more on the doorstep? Is it, look, Brexit needs to be stopped, or, look, vote for us because we're going to give you free broadband, put more police on the ground, put more money into the NHS and education?
Well, I mean, I personally don't believe that Brexit will be resolved by a general election. I think Theresa May tried that, and look what happened. So, I mean, I think Labour are fundamentally much more interested in our social agenda, because that is what people are fundamentally much more concerned about. Obviously, there are implications for what kind of Brexit outcome we end up with in this country. If you're in a place like the West Midlands, where I am, then the Johnson deal risks seeing Cadbury and Jaguar Land Rover ceasing to trade. So, people are anxious about that. But I think fundamentally people want to know, how long can our schools, hospital and police service go on like this?
But in your case, you said that in the West Midlands there are businesses that will be affected with the Brexit outcome, and that relates directly to if we are able to maintain our frictionless trade. But the Brexit stance of the Labour Party is not exactly very clear for people on the doorstep, because essentially you are telling people, give us your vote, we'll put in for a people's vote for a second referendum, we'll negotiate some acceptable deal between the EU and us, and we'll put that versus Remain, but we won't tell you which side we're going to support. You're asking for a vote, but you're not telling people where you're going to put your weight behind.
Well, that's not quite the policy as I understand it. I mean, I think all we've said is that we can't accept a deal that means we're outside the customs union and have got no arrangement with the social market, because that will make it impossible for us to trade. So what we're saying is we would try to renegotiate the deal to include those elements, and then we would say to people, well, look, this is the best deal available. This is it. Forget all the rubbish from 2016. This is it. Do you want it or not? And that's exactly what Harold Wilson did in 1975. All we're doing is offering exactly the same thing, renegotiate it and give people a straight option. And if you remember, Harold stayed above it as well and was able to bring the country back together as a result. So I don't think there's anything unusual about the Labour position. I think it's a tried and tested formula.
Okay. Steve McCabe, thank you very much for your time this Sunday morning. That's Steve McCabe, Labour Party candidate for Birmingham Selly Oak there. After the 12 o'clock news, we will have Will Moy from Full Fact joining us in the studio. I know he's done his homework, he's done his fact-checking, and he's going to tell us all about the promises you've been hearing, the big sound bites of this week. Put them to a fact check. Make sure that what we are being told is actually factually correct. Remember, you don't want to make up your decision based on dodgy information. And as we discovered last week, it's much better to fact check things that you vehemently agree with than things that you might be suspicious about. 0344 499 1000 is the number you need to give us a call and ask Will a question directly if you have any thoughts. Or you can tweet us at Talk Radio. And of course, you can still watch us on YouTube if you go to our YouTube Twitter page. You can also text the word talk to 87222. It's the 12 o'clock news next.
We are
Talk Radio.
The Alexis Conran Show on Talk Radio with The Times and The Sunday Times. Know your times.
Turn your city into a playground with the Renault Capture Play. With automatic headlights to uncover hidden spots, rain-sensitive front wipers to clear the way, and contrasting roof to show your true colors. Just $189 a month and zero deposit with 0% APR. Search Renault Capture and book your test drive today. Renault PCP Finance, Capture Play TCE 90, 48 months. Optional final payments, 5424. Subject to status, over 18s, T's and C's apply. Order by December 17th. Retail customers at participating dealers only.
At Morrison's, we've expanded our free-from range and we've crunched the price of many of your favourites. Like a 500-gram bag of free-from fusilli pasta, way down to 60p. That's half price. And a 4-pack of free-from flapjack slices, way down to 80p. Price crunch at Morrison's. Majority of stores while stocks last. Online varies. Fusilli was £1.20, flapjack was £1.40.
Everyone knows it pays to shop around to save money on your energy deal. But who has the time? If only there was a website that did all the hard work for you, year after year. Well, there is. It's called switchcraft.co.uk. They find you better energy deals and automatically switch you every time your plan ends, helping customers save an average of £219 a year on energy bills. Best of all, it's totally free. Switchcraft.co.uk. The one-stop, no-hassle route to cheaper energy. Start saving now at switchcraft.co.uk/radio. Switching made smarter.
Countdown to the election on Talk Radio.
The polls, the papers, the policies.
Your election station, Talk Radio.
Across the UK, online and on DAB.
Talk Radio, on the hour news headlines.
It's midday, I'm Daryl Jackson. The Conservatives' promise to cut down on immigration if returned to power has been met with a negative response from the business community. The party says the vast majority of migrants will be required to have a job offer to come to the UK, regardless of where they're from. The CBI's Dame Caroline Fairbairn is questioning that approach.
When we hear talk about brightest and best, I think that is a worry. You know, if you do want to build 200,000 houses a year, you don't just need the architects and the designers. You need the carpenters, you need the electricians, you need the labourers.
Labour appears to have agreed to reform free movement, while the Lib Dems say they'll preserve it. The Duke of York says he does not regret his friendship with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein in an interview with Newsnight. It's claimed the friendship led to the Duke being introduced to Virginia Roberts Giuffre, who says they had sex when she was just 17, which he denies. And the Prince says there's no proof that a photo of the pair together is real.
You can't prove whether or not that photograph is faked or not, because it is a photograph of a photograph of a photograph.
Scientists in Devon are looking to the seabed to see if it can provide answers on how to protect the UK from crumbling coastlines. The high-tech Titan Discovery vessel is hoping to help researchers come up with ways to prepare for rising sea levels. And the Prince of Wales and Duchess of Cornwall have arrived in New Zealand for an official tour. Charles and Camilla touched down at the country's largest Royal Air Force base at the start of a week-long trip. On to the weather, cloudy with rain across southern Scotland and northern England. It will be mostly dry and bright in the south.
Talk Radio Sports Update.
Gareth Southgate feels his young squad have shown they can deal with the pressure of playing for England. They'll hope to finish their impressive Euro 2020 qualifying campaign with a victory in Kosovo this evening. Wales' hopes of qualifying are still alive after their 2-0 victory in Azerbaijan. They'll qualify if they beat Hungary on Tuesday. And Scotland will also be in the playoffs, but they're ending their qualifying campaign on a high. They secured back-to-back wins for the first time under manager Steve Clarke with a 2-1 victory in Cyprus yesterday.
Talk Radio. Across the UK, online and on DAB Digital Radio.
Talk Politics with Alexis Conran on Talk Radio.
Welcome back to the show with me, Alexis Conran, here on Talk Radio. You're listening to Talk Politics. I am very happy to say that Will Moy is back in the studio with me from Full Fact, the chief executive of Full Fact. In fact, Will, welcome back.
Thanks for having me again.
Thank you. Well, no, look, this is important. We want people to base their decision, whichever way they're going to vote, on facts. I had Paul Scully on just earlier and challenged him about the 40 new hospitals, but again he found a way to say, well, actually, you know, it's money that's going to be for hospitals, new hospitals to be built later on in the future.
And just to remind everybody, they're only building 6 now and giving some others money to think about making plans to think about building in the future.
But again, you know, I mean, if politicians are not going to be swayed, and they're going to stick to their headlines. At least the voters can actually look at the facts as they are and make their own minds up. This isn't about trying to steer you in one direction or another. This is about what have the political parties told us this week? Does any of it stand up? So
that's what I love about elections in this day and age. We can look things up for ourselves. We're not dependent on what the newspapers will tell us or what the political parties say to us. We can push back a bit.
We can push back. Now, look, everyone's got also their bias, their inbuilt bias. They'll tend to ignore some discrepancies from people they agree with. But hey, look, our job here is just to put the facts out. And thank you, as always, for giving us your time. Let's start with a question from last week that I didn't get a chance to answer. Unfortunately, the person who asked the question didn't put their name down. I'll just double check if we managed to get... No, I don't have the name. But they asked the question of whether or not racial crime increased after the referendum result in 2016. What does Full Fact know about this question?
So there's a category of crimes called hate crimes, which are crimes where the victim perceives them as having been motivated by racial hatred or religious hatred or something like that. And that level of crime has gone up really dramatically over the last 7 or 8 years. Mm-hmm. So in 2012-13, it was at 40,000. It's now just over 100,000 crimes a year. Now, there's a lot going on with that figure. Those are the figures recorded by the police. And in 2014, the police recorded crime figures were challenged by the UK Statistics Authority. That's the official watchdog that tells you whether our official statistics can be trusted or not. And they basically said they're not, get your act together, sort it out. And so the police did a piece of work to make sure that they were recording hate crimes properly. So one of the things we know is that number is bigger now because the police is recording hate crime more. The second thing we know is that people are likely to be more likely to report hate crime now. So there's a decent chance the number has partly gone up because of people being more willing to report. But the statisticians do believe that there has been a real increase in the number of hate crimes.
Actual number has also gone up.
And there are certain events that are that make that happen, or that prompt spikes in hate crimes. One was the referendum, with a lot of the language around that in 2016. Mm-hmm. Another is, sadly, terrorist attacks lead to more hate crimes happening. So yes, there has been an increase in hate crimes. It's pretty big on the figures, but the figures are partly about better recording and better reporting, so recognising what was already happening, as well as statisticians think an increase in the number of hate crimes as well.
Excellent. I hope we answered your question. You didn't put your name. Do put it next time. I've got another question that's come in now, which I'll put to you now, just in case you have the answer in your head. If not, then we can get some minions to...
It's a lucky dip. We'll do what we can.
Lucky dip. Hi, Alexis. The question goes, just had a flyer through the door from Labour candidate. Apparently, quote, only Labour is offering a second referendum on Brexit. Can we fact check against Lib Dems, please?
So the Liberal Democrat policy is to get out of...
To revoke Article
50. So that means to end the Brexit process completely. I'm not sure that only Labour is offering a second referendum. I'd have to check the policies of the other parties. In particular, I'm thinking about the Green Party.
The Green Party, I would think, and also SNP and possibly even Plaid Cymru.
Let's do a bit of checking around.
I'll tell you what,
we'll come back on that.
We'll come back on that because also the manifestos are not out yet, so we might have some more clarity. But keep them coming. 0344 499 1000 is the number you need, or you could tweet us at Talk Radio. Let's look at some of the claims that came out this week. Labour made a claim concerning oranges and maggots from the US.
Waiter, there's a maggot in my orange juice, according to the Labour Party. They say that if we negotiate a new trade deal with the US, if we do go ahead with Brexit, then the US has much lower food safety standards, and in particular, they allow acceptable levels of maggots in your orange juice. And similarly acceptable levels of rat hair in paprika. Now, I invite everybody who's currently cooking their Sunday lunch to imagine what an American person would say if they found maggots floating in their orange juice. There is There is a serious point underneath this,
Mm-hmm.
which is that the US does have lower food standards in general than the EU and the UK. And if we ended up negotiating a trade deal with the US, that would be a point of negotiation.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not the case that there is an acceptable level of maggots in orange juice in the US. What happens actually is the Food and Drug Administration, who are responsible for that over there, have a level of contamination in food above which they will always take enforcement action. So if they find this much of something in your food, they'll kick in and you'll be prosecuted or taken to task or whatever.
Right.
Below that level, they can decide whether or not to take enforcement action. So
Right.
it's not that they won't, is that they may or may
One is
not,
mandatory.
depending on whether they think it's appropriate.
I have. This is something I've spoken about before, so I have some of my own facts, not facts that I've made up, but these are sourced facts from a previous article. But it is fair, and would it be true to say that US reports higher rate of illness from foodborne illnesses than in the UK? In fact, the figures that I have here. 14.7% of the US population suffer from an illness versus 1.5% in the UK. There's 10 times more than we have in the UK. Would it be fair to say that they, in very broad terms, which I realise that fact-checking doesn't like broad terms, but in the US you will find many more cases of foodborne illnesses than you do in the UK?
Well, I don't know those figures for the US, so let me ask you what I would ask you as a fact checker.
Where did you get them?
What's your source? Yeah.
Do you know what? Here's the article. I will, and rather stupidly, I didn't actually put the source, which is a great lesson to us all. But it is here, and I will find it for you before the end.
So when full fact
end of the
check
show.
something, you will always see a link to a source.
To a source,
If
which
you go
is-
to our
which is
website,
exactly-
you'll see links to the sources for everything I say here.
But it says
so
that
I will go and get those figures, or I'll ask my
Yeah.
colleagues to go and get the US figures, and we'll come back to it next week, and we'll see if we got the same ones you have.
I can tell you that these figures from this article, they say that they come from the US Centre of Disease Control and Prevention. They reported around 380 deaths in the US each year attributed to foodborne salmonella poisoning, whereas in the UK we had no deaths in England and Wales from salmonella between 2005 and 2015. And that comes from the Public Health England
CDC
website.
is the body in the US which is responsible for measuring this thing, so that's encouraging. The fact that you've taken it over a 10-year period is good, because sometimes in 1 year, if you have an outbreak of something, you might get an unrepresentative year, but that sounds like it might be reliable data. But we will go and we will double check, because that's what we do.
And I have found my source. I've just, as an idiot, I didn't see it. These figures come from Sustain, an organisation called Sustain. So they were published, I would say, about a year ago. Because that's the part of my notebook that I'm looking at now, a year ago. Okay, so Conservatives. Full fact, you've been looking into some of their criticisms of Labour policies. What might they be?
Well, they're not actually Labour policies. This is the problem.
Spotted the flaw there.
The Labour Party's tactic that we've noticed repeatedly in this election is finding things that may be difficult about negotiating a trade deal with the US and exaggerating, the extent of them. The Conservative Party's tactic that we've seen more than once is saying that Labour will do something before Labour's even published its manifesto, and then telling terrible tales about how much it will cost. So they've come up with a cost for Labour's policies. Reminder, neither the Conservative Party nor the Labour Party have said what their policies are yet. Nobody's published a manifesto. We're still in the early stages of the election. In that cost that the Conservatives have come up with, they seem to have double counted, renationalising the national grid. They've included things that Labour Party say are not their policy, including abolishing private schools. They've exaggerated some of the costs of things that Labour want to do eventually, like moving the public sector towards a 4-day week, reducing hours worked in the public sector. That's something that Labour have talked about as an ambition over 10 years. The Conservatives have assumed they'll have to pay for it from next
day
year,
one,
which is, of course, basically impossible to change anything that quickly. And they have included some reasonable things that Labour is committed to doing, and which they've given costs for. So there's some grain of truth in the middle of this, but then they piled other things on top and come up with a very large number that sounds threatening.
It was 1.2 trillion.
Yeah, I was trying to avoid repeating it.
Yeah, sorry, I've done your work for you. You've also looked into, because this week they moved from the fiscal promises to. There has been talk of migration. We talked a little bit about migration with Naomi Smith and Kulveer Ranger earlier on in the show. But again, the Conservatives talked about an increase in net migration of 840,000 immigrants. Where did that figure come from?
Well, they've published a big, long document to try to make it look plausible. We don't think it is plausible at all. There's a pile of assumptions that have gone into making up that number. And essentially what they've done is, again, they've said that Labour have a policy which Labour say they don't have, of opening up free movement to everybody everywhere in the world. And then they've made some assumptions, some guesses about how many people might come to the UK if they actually did that. So, for example, they've split the world into short haul and long haul, places which are nearby and places which are far away, which is a very normal thing to do when you're thinking about migration patterns. And they've assumed that everybody in the rest of the world, the not short haul, is going to arrive in the UK in the same volume as Hungarians arrived in the UK after the EU was expanded.
Right.
So they've just assumed that Hungary is a perfect model for the rest of the world, regardless of economic circumstances or the similarity of the economy, or how likely they are to speak the same language, and so on and so forth. And they've come up with this massive number. And again, stress, this is not what Labour say their policy is. So the number is, we think, exaggerated and unrealistic. And just not a helpful guide to, it's not a serious contribution to the election debate.
Aren't they setting themselves up for a fall of making all these claims about the Labour policies when Labour have not actually announced their manifesto? I believe we are expecting a manifesto this Thursday?
You know more than I do.
Okay, fine.
I thought it might happen this week because Labour officially signed off their manifesto yesterday.
Yeah.
So we would expect them not to hide it. But
and it's basically Thursday, the day that you are unavailable to everyone because you're sitting there going through line by line the Labour manifesto.
Well, there'll be quite a crowd of us doing that, yeah, and there'll also be expert organisations we work with. So we'll be talking to economics specialists, we'll be talking to immigration specialists, we'll be talking to health specialists, all poring over different parts of the manifesto to understand what's going on. And we'll be doing that for all of the parties, but particularly Conservative and Labour, who have the best chance of actually leading the next government, and making sure that we understand not just are the claims in the manifesto right, but also are they painting a realistic picture of the world.
I believe the Conservative Party manifesto, they said it's going to be a short one. It's 40 pages. There you go. It's going to be just for you.
Fact checkers are always conflicted. It's really nice to have enough detail that you can really understand what they're saying, but on the other hand, it's a lot to wade through, so we'll take what we get.
We're going to take a quick break and keep your questions coming in. 0344 499 1000 is the number you need. You could tweet us at Talk Radio. You can watch us on YouTube, and you can text the word TALK to 87222.
We are
Talk Radio. The Alexis Conran Show on Talk Radio with The Times and The Sunday Times. Know your times.
At Lidl, we're big on all those Christmas parties. The season to be jolly. Try our Party Time Indian snack selection for only $2.99. And our Party Time mac and cheese bites for just $1.19. Big on a Christmas you can believe in. Now that's big on quality and always Lidl on price. Subject to availability, selected stores excludes an eye.
You're in charge of hiring, and Indeed has solutions, like sponsored jobs, which increase the visibility of your post in search results to make sure the right candidates find you faster. And we give you free clones of your best employees. What's that? Oh, no cloning. But there are sponsored jobs.
See why more than 250,000 companies in the UK use Indeed for hiring. Visit Indeed.com/redeem today and get a free sponsored job upgrade on your first posting. Terms and conditions apply.
Millions of people are missing out by having a current account that doesn't pay them any interest on their hard-earned money. TSB offers interest to all their Plus account customers for no monthly fee. Plus, you can stop your friends and family missing out by recommending the Plus account to them. And when they switch, you'll both earn £75. Search online or visit your local branch. Terms and conditions apply.
Today at John Lewis & Partners, we're matching a competitor's promotion, so we've lowered our prices on selected products across our range. It's all part of our commitment to being never knowingly undersold, meaning that today and every day we match the prices of our high street competitors. Shop in store or online. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Talk Radio Traffic and Travel.
In Northumberland, the A1 northbound is currently blocked at the Felton turnoff because of an accident involving a couple of vehicles. In London, the M25 anti-clockwise has a broken down car blocking lane 1 between junction 25 for Enfield and 24 for Potters Bar. The M3 northbound still has a lane closure and delays. It's a lorry having a tyre changed at junction 1 for Sunbury. And in West Sussex, the M23 northbound between junction 9 for Gatwick Airport and the M25 at junction 8. Lane 1 is closed for an accident which is causing delays. I'm Michael Page.
It's one small step for man, one giant shop. Sorry, 2 giant shops a month at 10% off with the new Tesco Club Card Plus. Oh, and double data from Tesco Mobile, all for $7.99 every month.
New Tesco Club Card Plus. Value you can't stop talking about. Subscribe online today. £200 max spend per shop, in-store spend only. Club Card app required. Exclusions apply. Double data only on pay monthly. Home from home destinations. First payment payable up front, subject to status. See online for details.
Across the UK, online and on DAB Digital Radio. The Alexis Conran Show on Talk Radio.
Welcome back to the show with me, Alexis Conran, here on Talk Radio. I'm sitting here with CEO from Full Fact, Will Moy. I'm very proud because actually the report that I referenced it was all kosher. You can find it at sustainweb.org. I will put it up on my Twitter feed. It has fears new trade deals with the US will increase UK food poisoning is the title, but in it's full facts and figures from Public Health England, the US Centres of Disease Control and Prevention report. So it's all sourced properly is what I would like to point out there. But thank you, Will, for telling me that I have to have that information at hand. I can't just be spewing out these figures without saying, yes, this is where they come from. We have a couple of more questions coming in from listeners. But before we go to those, can we deal with one that I've seen come up, not just on Twitter, but I've had people ask me. The Lib Dems have found themselves in a little bit of hot water with leaflets that they've been pushing in through people's doors.
Yes, they have. And we're complaining about this, actually. We have seen the Lib Dems using polling to suggest that they are the only competitive party in some constituencies. So here's an example of a question they asked that turned into a big bar chart on their leaflet. Get this. Imagine that the result in your constituency was expected to be very close between the Conservative candidate and the Liberal Democrat candidate, and none of the other parties were competitive. In that scenario, what party would you vote for?
Right.
And they've used that to suggest that, this is what's likely to happen in this constituency, and therefore only the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats are competitive.
Was the question on the leaflet?
It was, yeah, in little small print under the bar chart.
Print.
So it's completely up to you and your listeners to decide whether that's enough honesty for you or not. But we know from the psychology research that we pay attention to in fact-checking that pictures matter. Pictures tell their own story.
People just see the picture. Now, I've got a question here, which I felt we dealt with last week's show, but it fits right into what we said just now. So it's Annie on Twitter says, is it true that political advertising is outside any advertising regulations and people can promise whatever they like?
Afraid so. Yeah, the only constraint on political advertising is you can't put it on TV. Anywhere else, you can lie through your teeth on a billboard if you want to. The Advertising Standards Authority won't touch it.
Right. And of course, that may fall... That leaflet would have fallen if it was an advert on a newspaper. Maybe the Advertising Standards Agency would have gone, hang on a minute, you've got to put the question in bigger lettering because that might feel as it's misleading people.
Not for political advertising. So if somebody's trying to sell you washing powder or something like that, they have to be legal, decent, honest and truthful. Those are the standards that the Advertising Standards Authority exists to uphold. If somebody's trying to get you to vote for them, then they don't have to uphold those same standards. So we, at Full Fact, have said that the political parties need to get together and agree some rules. They need to agree some basic level of standards that they're all going to adhere to. But right now, there's nothing to make them do that.
We've had a little bit of confirmation to do with Labour saying that they're the only party offering a second referendum. I believe our producer has been looking into that, and we have confirmation that SNP and the Greens have been saying that they were in support of a second referendum. So it's not strictly true to say that Labour are the only party offering a second referendum. Of course, until the manifestos get published and put forward, all this is up in the air, as you can assume. There is another question here that's in the shape of one of those graphs that someone has tweeted us. I appreciate that we are now sort of in freeform territory, Will, where we're sort of going, hey, here's another one. It's a graph showing borrowing by governments. I appreciate that borrowing is a tricky question always, because it has to do with are you borrowing against what you're bringing in, like any sort of household. If you're borrowing more than actually you're bringing in, then that's a bigger problem. But you can borrow if you can afford to borrow, so to say. The graph, whilst I give you a little bit of time to have a look at it, Labour, it said, borrowed £500 billion, the total borrowed Labour governments in the last 33 years. The Conservatives, the total borrowing of the Conservative government since the last 9 years has been £770 billion. That's £270 billion more than Labour governments have borrowed in the last 33 years. The source, it says Bank of England's economic data, and the only other logo I can see on this graph is Collective Voice.
And I don't know who Collective Voice are, but this is actually a claim that Jeremy Corbyn has made in the past. And there seems to have been something lost in transmission. Actually, the total Conservative government borrowing over the last 9 years comes to 870 billion, not 770 billion. So it seems like a typo crept into a graph somewhere along the line, as it turned into a meme online, perhaps. Total borrowing for Labour in all of its periods in office, about 490 million. Right. Total borrowing for the Conservatives in the last 9 years, 870 billion. But is that actually a useful comparison to make? Basically, no. The economy gets bigger. That's what it does. There's more people, we're doing more, the economy gets bigger. And so just adding up in that way, everything going back to 1945, comparing it to the last decade, isn't actually a particularly useful or fair comparison to make. So the numbers, this meme is a slightly mangled version of it, but the underlying numbers are right. But it's not a particularly useful comparison to make because of the economy growing.
When looking at the numbers, and I was speaking earlier to Steve McCabe, who said something which I've long thought is true, is that when you talk to the general public, and when I say general public, I mean the people on the doorstep, the general public, people who are not looking at these stories on a daily basis. But when you start talking billions and trillions, I think people do sort of switch off. They are sort of magical numbers that don't really mean much. But if you had to give any advice to people looking at figures like that, because again, I'm sure, for example, come Tuesday night with Boris Johnson and Jeremy Corbyn going head-to-head in their ITV debate, the question of borrowing, both major parties wanting to be seen as fiscally responsible, is going to come up. If you had to give some advice to people who are not political geeks, what is the important figure for them to look at? As you said, this one, it's true. The Conservatives have borrowed more in the last, probably almost double in the last 9 years than every single Labour government in the last 33 years. Yeah. But you said that's not an important enough figure. What is the figure that they should look at?
Okay, well, let me ask you this question. Yeah. How big is the economy?
I have no idea.
I mean, make it easy for you. To the nearest £100 billion.
Yeah. No,
nobody has a clue, do they?
No.
I ask this question sometimes when I do talks. I asked it in the Bank of England once.
Did they know?
Quite a lot of Bank of England staff were not sure. Okay. I've asked it in roomfuls of economists. So it's not surprising. If you don't know how big the economy is, it's not easy to get any sense of scale. Yeah. So the UK's economy, roughly speaking, is £2 trillion.
Okay.
So that's 100 billion pounds, right?
Right.
And the government spends about 800 billion pounds a year, about 850. So if you want to know what's a big number in terms of government spending, think about roughly 800 billion as being the total government spending, and then everything else slots into place. So if they say we're going to spend 500 million more on this, well, out of 800 billion, that's not actually a big number. So that's the real, probably the one anchor point that I find most useful. Okay. It's just, in the same way that is something expensive? Well, it's kind of relative to your salary, right?
Yeah.
Is something expensive for a government is relative to the total amount of money they spend. And then when it comes to debt, the things to remember about government debt is it's not like us and a credit card. Government can borrow very cheaply because it's basically got an entire country as collateral. So government borrowing, actually, economists think makes sense to do sometimes so that you can invest in things that make life better for people in the country. So although it's really easy to think of debt as always a bad thing, it's not necessarily the most useful way of thinking about it. Main thing to remember is if they're promising to spend your money, they're spending about 800 billion pounds of your money every year. So everything is relative to that.
And should we be looking and paying attention to the national debt? Do we know where the national debt stands at the moment? Is it increasing? Is it decreasing? Are we borrowing and spending more than we can afford?
So this is actually a massive debate, and it may be one that we start to see play out during the election. The debate after the big recession in 2008 was basically, should we spend money because that will stimulate the economy and that will help revive things?
Which some countries took that view.
Some countries took that approach.
Portugal, for example, being they said no to austerity, we're going to spend our way out of this, so they borrowed and spent.
Exactly. And the UK took the austerity approach, which was we are going to get control over our public finances, we're going to reduce the proportion of state spending, and so on and so forth. It looks like both of two biggest parties, are going to go into this election promising to spend quite a lot more money and hoping to stimulate the economy that way. But until we see their manifestos, we can't really know. But there is a genuine debate among economists as to when more spending makes the economy better and when it doesn't. Nice. So there's no right answer to the question of how big a debt should the government have.
And just a simple question, would it be fair to say that the Conservative government in the last 9 years have increased our public debt?
Yes, it would. So the government, there's two things. There's the debt and the deficit. As you know, Conservatives with the austerity agenda had a very strong drive to eliminate the deficit. The deficit is how much more money the government spends than it brings in taxes and so on. But the deficit, in other words, is how much the national debt goes up every year. So what they've been trying to do is reduce the deficit and eventually eliminate the deficit. But of course, while you're doing that, the debt is still going up. As long as you still have a deficit, the debt is still going up.
So you can reduce the deficit, but your debt will still be going up.
Exactly.
But not as much as it would have done because you've reduced the deficit.
But as I said, getting rid of the debt is not something that most economists would say a country should aim to do.
But reducing the deficit is?
No, again, that's a debate.
Oh, again.
There is a really huge debate about whether austerity was the most effective response to the recession.
Going back to, you can spend your way out of the recession.
Exactly. So you'd have to get economists in here to discuss that, and I suspect you wouldn't get a consensus answer if you did.
A bit like Brexit. Well, I always feel smarter after you've been in the studio.
I always feel dumber after you ask me questions, so thanks.
Well, give and take. Okay, silver linings. Well, thank you as always for your time. I hope we, as I said, I'd like to make this a regular thing. And if you can give us your time, I know that listeners are really appreciative of all the information that you give out, and you, as fullfact.org, do, and all the work you do. I'm assuming you'll be live fact checking the debate on Tuesday.
We will. So if you follow us on Twitter, you'll get real-time fact checking of that debate, and we'll also be publishing a roundup of the debate and probably various things on social media about it. Let me also say you can email us or email Talk Radio at any point during the week and say, here's a question I want answered, and we will do our best to come to it. Don't know everything off the top of my head, but I do know people who know the answers to almost everything, so with a bit of time we can answer most questions.
Brilliant. Keep your questions coming, and actually my advice would be forget all the press of who won that debate. Go and read the full fact review of who said what and how accurate it was, and then make up your own mind. Will Moy, Chief Executive of Full Fact, thank you so much, as always, for joining us.
Thank you.
Across the UK, online and on DAB.
The Matthew Wright Show, tomorrow afternoon from 1 on Talk Radio.
I'm Matthew Wright. Join me on Talk Radio. I'll be shaking up your afternoons with 3 hours of original current affairs conversation, unfiltered comment, and irreverent opinion.
Putting the world to rights. The Matthew Wright Show, tomorrow afternoon from 1.
Always look on the right side of life.
On Talk Radio.
Parties contesting the general election include the Conservatives, Labour, Liberal Democrats, the SNP, Plaid Cymru, Green Party, UKIP and the Brexit Party.
Outspoken opinions and decisive debate. The Alexis Conran Show on Talk Radio.
Welcome back to the show with me, Alexis Conran, here on Talk Radio. We've just been talking to Will Moy there from Full Fact. I'm sure quite a lot of the clips will make it onto our Twitter feed at Talk Radio. Keep your questions coming in, because Will very graciously is going to give us more of his time. He's going to come back next week, and we are in the process of talking to his people to make this final hour a full hour with Full Fact here, because it seems that more and more of you want to ask questions and to get Full Fact to look into your questions, and it seems that it merits a full hour, so we're going to work towards that. Let us know your thoughts. Would you like more of Will Moy on the show, more of Full Fact, looking at all your questions? It seems to me like something quite exciting and something that we should do. So thank you for that. A couple of your messages before we go to a couple of your calls. Important issue in this election. Darren on Facebook says stopping austerity. Maureen on Facebook says the most important thing is sorting out the corruption within our parliament. Until we do, we can't have a true democracy. I think having an election is a true democracy, Maureen, but I don't know what you mean by that. You mean you want the MPs that you like the look of to make Parliament, and the ones you don't like, you want them out of Parliament. I don't think that's how democracy works, but thank you for your message, Maureen. Caitlin on YouTube says, poll after poll after poll, the people want less immigration. Not the polls that we've been looking at, but thank you very much, Caitlin. And if you could provide those polls, that would be great. Something that we could put to Will Moy next week. Helmut on YouTube says, why must immigration be the answer to everything? I agree with you there. The most important issue, Susan on Twitter says, NHS, veteran support, homelessness, mental health support. Brexit isn't everything. Neither is the obsession of keeping Corbyn out. It's short-sighted and selfish. Thank you for that, Sarah. Paul on Twitter says, an electable leader of the Labour Party. Thank you for that, Paul. Let's go for one of our calls from Bath this time. Glenn has called us from Bath. Welcome to the show, Glenn. What would you like to say?
Hi. Yes, I think the disappointment I have, and I think a lot of people in the country have the same disappointment, is that we're seeing the last 3 years go nowhere. We're seeing people squabbling in Parliament, and whatever side you believe in, it's obviously totally dysfunctional. And what concerns me, and I think a lot of other voters, is, none of the approaches of either party seem to be really getting at the problem, which is the point that many, many views are not being represented. Right. It's this two-party system that is dysfunctional. And I'm concerned that we don't have a system that allows us to change our system. Nobody's asking the question, what should we really be looking at for a functional parliament?
Well, you say that, though, Glenn, but back in 2010, was it 2012, that we had the AV referendum? Remember, the Liberal Democrats went into coalition with the Conservatives. One of the prerequisites was that there will be an alternative vote referendum. We were given that choice and we rejected it.
Well, it was a one-question system. It's like the Leave or Remain.
Yeah.
Those sort of questions do not explore the alternatives in enough detail. There's not enough looking at all the possible solutions. And I've been in corporate communications. And I mean, if a company ran the country like we are running the country, it would be definitely a disaster. So I'm really concerned that there is nobody anywhere that's really looking at how can we change the way that we manage our democracy to get everybody's opinion considered and a system that allows a reasonable agreement between the various parties.
So
that's what's missing.
So when you look at your options there in Bath, Glenn, without mentioning any specific candidates, if you could, do you feel that you are not represented? Do you feel politically homeless?
Absolutely. I'm pro-Brexit, basically.
Yeah.
I don't think the Conservatives answer some of the really pressing questions that Labour are bringing up. On the other hand, I don't support Labour because I think they're far too radical and very, their business solutions are appalling. So there's nobody I can vote for. Who do I look for to represent? And there's a lot of people like me. That's the problem.
So what? Tell me about the radical ideas. What is it that scares you? You support Brexit, but you feel that the Labour are too radical in their views and their manifesto pledges. To be fair, that the manifesto is still to come. But tell me a policy that you look at from Labour and you go, "Ooh, that's a bit too extreme for me." What sort of things scare you?
Well, some of the things I like. I mean, I was brought up in the power industry, which was nationalised when I was a youngster, and it worked very well because the people in the industry were all people who grew up in the industry. The CEO was somebody who came up through the ranks. People knew what they were doing. They weren't just financial people. So in one way, I think, the Labour is right. We need to have our basic industries should be not orientated on shareholder value and CEO wages. They should be about functionality. But on the other hand, we know that nationalisation without proper business approach also doesn't work. So that's what scares me. They appear to be, let's nationalise and that will solve everything. It won't, so that's my concern.
And when it comes to your feelings about Brexit, you'd like to see Brexit done. So do the Conservatives not offer you that opportunity? They seem to be the party that is running on the slogan of get Brexit done. Why do you feel that they don't represent you?
Well, I originally voted and was very involved with UKIP way back, and what I noticed is that the Conservatives then were very nasty about the way they pushed UKIP around. I had some very nasty experiences, and it was quite obvious that the aim of the Conservative Party then was to ensure at any cost that UKIP didn't manage to get into politics. And what I'm seeing again now is the reluctance, well, not reluctance, I think they're deliberately avoiding a sensible solution with UKIP, UKIP or
Brexit Party.
Yeah, to actually come to get Brexit done. It's all about power. And I think this is where our democracy is so rotten, is that they're all about power.
But the Brexit Party have put their support behind the Conservatives. They're standing down on 317 seats. That's the Brexit Party leader decided by himself, Nigel Farage, that the Brexit Party will support the Conservatives. Are you not in agreement with the Brexit Party leader there?
I'm in agreement in total. What I do find objectionable is that now the Conservative Party are not standing down in the seats where Brexit Party can be successful, i.e. they don't want any Brexit Party MPs in Parliament. Again, it's about power and getting, cornering the market. We only want the Conservatives or Labour. And, to be quite honest now, I don't know what the Lib Dems will do, but I don't think they'll get anywhere. It's a two-horse race, and it doesn't work.
You mentioned earlier, Glenn, the phrase "get Brexit done." We've been asking our listenership of what that phrase means to them. Do you truly believe that "get Brexit done"? Should the Conservatives bring back any sort of majority, do you think that 31st of January, we're out, Brexit's done, that's the end of it?
Well, I've read quite a lot from the business point of view about how the European Union works. And basically, if you look at it and all the regulations, it's a corporatist, it's run by the corporates. I've been involved in negotiations and quoting and doing, those sorts of things. And it's quite obvious that what happens in the EU Parliament is that the globalist company with like a pharmaceutical company or something, comes up with an idea what they want. They tell the EU Parliament how to do it, and it gets put through. In general, of course, that's not always the case. But very often it is. But
my question is not what you don't like about the EU. My question is a bit more specific than that. Do you think that getting Brexit done actually stands up as a statement? Because past the 31st of January, Brexit is nowhere near done, because you have to, after we leave, we have to negotiate what sort of relationship we need with the EU. And come July 2020, whoever is Prime Minister in this country has to inform the EU whether we like another extension past January 2020. And I put it to you that by the time the government takes over, but let's say in the beginning of the year, you have less than 6 months to organise a free trade agreement before you have to inform the EU if you'd like another extension. It's just not going to happen.
I agree. I think that phrase, "get Brexit done," is another, simple thing that doesn't work. And again, people latch on to that. And you're right. And we wasted 3.5 years when this should have been done.
Okay, Glenn, I'm sorry I have to leave it there because I have to go to a break, but thank you very much for your call, Glenn from Bath. We've got a couple of more callers we're going to take after the break. Keep your calls coming. 0344 499 1000 is the number that you need. You're listening to Alexis Conran here on Talk Radio with The Times. Be well informed.
On DAB, digital radio, online and on mobile.
This is Talk Radio.
The Alexis Conran Show on Talk Radio with The Times and The Sunday Times. Know your times.
The nights have started to draw in, and at DFS we know that can only mean one thing. Everyone's spending more time at home getting nice and cosy. You can't beat it. That's why our autumn-winter collection sofas are hand-made to order for complete comfort. And many are guaranteed to be delivered in time for Christmas. So make sure you come home to a sofa that's perfect for you. DFS.
Postcode lottery costs £10 a month, and £30,000 will be won every day by players in the December draws. Join in with your postcode at postcodelottery.co.uk before midnight on the 21st of November to play in the December draws. PPL manage lotteries on behalf of good causes. 16 plus, conditions apply. Play responsibly.
Someone's knocking at the door. Somebody's ringing the bell.
Philip Schofield here. Did you know WeBuyAnyCar.com can help settle any outstanding finance on your car? They just sort it all out for you. And did you know you can't hum whilst holding your nose? No, me neither. Not as useful as settling outstanding finance, but good to know. Take the hassle out of selling your car and enter your reg number now at WeBuyAnyCar.com.
Admin fee may apply. For more information, see WeBuyAnyCar.com/info.
Talk Radio, traffic and travel.
In West Sussex on the M23 northbound, we've got a lane closed for an accident and delays between Junction 9 for Gatwick Airport and Junction 8 for the M25. The M4 remains closed both ways in Berkshire between Junction 6 for Slough and Junction 8-9 for Maidenhead until tomorrow morning. That's causing delays on the approaches on the diversion. The M40 heading into London from Junction 1A at the M25 to the A40 Denham roundabout. 2 lanes are closed for a vehicle fire and it's queuing on the approach. And in North Yorkshire, the A1M southbound is very slow, approaching Junction 44 for Tadcaster. I'm Michael Page.
O Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo? Deny thy father and
Come to the shops with me. We can get 10% off 2 big shops a month with the new Tesco Club Card Plus. Oh, and 10% off your favourite Tesco brands, including F&F in-store every day. All for $7.99 a month.
New Tesco Club Card Plus. Value you can't stop talking about. Subscribe online today. £200 max spend per shop. In-store spend only. Club card app required. Exclusions apply. See online for details.
Across the UK, online and on DAB Digital Radio. The Alexis Conran Show on Talk Radio.
Welcome back to the show. Me, Alexis Conran, here on Talk Radio. Coming up after the 1 o'clock news, you have Jamie East taking you all the way till 4 o'clock. Jamie will be here soon to tell us what's coming up on his show. But before that, let's speak to Teresa in Oxford. Teresa, welcome to the show.
Good afternoon, Alexis.
Good afternoon. What would you like to say?
Well, I'm a carer for a family member. And I just wanted to know if any of the parties were interested in giving the carers allowance a bit of an up so we could have a livable wage.
Yeah.
I work 40 plus hours a week and more if that family member needs me to. And I get £66.15 a week.
Crikey. Okay. It is. We know that there is not only are carers not paid as much as they should be paid, but also there's a huge shortage in carers. And with both parties, both main parties, to be fair, we've yet to hear from the Lib Dems, the Greens, and SNPs, but the immigration policy from both main parties being that of essentially going to more controls on immigration means that those carer vacancies will be not being filled. But also, if they are being filled, then what's the incentive for people to come on over if the wages are so low? Teresa, let me ask you this, because there was a story yesterday that I covered on my show that 1 million hours of overtime a week are being worked by NHS staff. Now, these were numbers released by the Labour Party. I can imagine that in as a carer, you must be looking at the same thing, that you don't look at your watch and go, oh, I'm done now, I've done my hours, I'm off now.
Well, you can't.
Exactly.
You can't do that when you're a family member. Even when I go home on a night time, I'm still on the clock, if you know what I mean. The mind is still going. Did I do that right? Is that person safe? Are they okay? I mean, I don't want to say who it is, who I look after, but you know, and you're constantly on call, 24/7, all the time. And it's not, money's never going to change that, because even if I got paid £300 a week, it would still be the same thing. But all you get is when you say, oh, I'm only on a certain wage, but to get that £66.15, you have to work 35 plus hours a week.
Yeah.
Which, okay, fair enough, that's the stipulation. But then they say to you, oh, you can go and get another job. Well, do you know something? When I come home on a night time, I'm mentally and physically exhausted. And the thought of having to go out and do another job to get extra on my pay packet, I don't know where I would get the energy to do that from, because I don't have any energy. I can hardly talk to my partner when he comes home from work because I'm just mentally disabled. Which is, I don't mean that I'm mentally disabled.
You're exhausted.
I just mean that I'm exhausted from doing what I have to do, looking after this person, you know. And the NHS, you know, what a mess that's in. I mean, I have a sister-in-law who works in the NHS, you know, and it's just Brexit. I mean, God, you can just go on forevermore, can't you? I mean,
Labour are saying they want to introduce a £10 an hour living wage, real living wage. Would that make a difference to you?
Financially, yes. But would they give it to me? Would they, as my employer, because they are my employer, the government are my employer, they are the ones that give me the money, would they give me £10 an hour? Labour is saying that, but at the end of the day, it's down to the employers whether they can afford to give that person £10 an hour. You know, I mean, I live in Oxford. Everybody knows how expensive Oxford is for the houses, etc., the living. There are a certain amount of employers in Oxfordshire that are giving this livable wage is £10. A lot aren't, because they can't afford to.
Mm-hmm. Tories, of course, are saying the disability benefits, carers allowance, which is where you fall into, which have not been subject to a freeze, will also increase by 1.7% next year.
I think it was £1 something, which I got last year a week, which is great. I'm grateful for the
We're
pound.
We're talking about £1.
But exactly, what can I do with £1, Alex? I mean, it's just, I don't want to complain. I'm not the person that I'm looking after, but you know something? What is it going to be like when I get old and somebody needs to look after me?
Are you looking after family members?
I am looking after a family member, yes.
Right.
So that's a different thing. When I gave up my job to look after this person because the person who was looking after her passed away. And so, therefore, I now have that responsibility. And there are millions of people that are in the same boat as me.
And I hate to bring it back to election, but that's where we are at the moment. Election is traditionally the time where people can use their vote to change their personal circumstances. But do you feel that you are represented in this election? Do you feel that there is a party out there that speaks for you and would make a real difference to your life?
Not really, because I haven't done in the last few years. Any of them haven't really done anything to do with the carers side of it. I am a Brexiteer. I did vote to leave, not because of immigration, because my mother is foreign. But I did. That was one of the reasons. Was immigration, not because I didn't want people to come in this country to work. It's because we are a island. We're a small island. Our infrastructure is crumbling. Our NHS is crumbling.
Isn't our NHS crumbling? We've got 40,000 nurses. A GP was telling me yesterday 40,000 nurses are vacant. We need 40,000, 10,000 more doctors. With free movement of people, we can fill those jobs better than without.
Look after them. We need to look after them when they come in this country in the first place. We need to. I mean,
but facts and figures tell us that the majority of EU migration are young, healthy people. They are not older people who need to go straight into the care system. So
but when they come over here, we need to make sure. I can only talk about Oxford because I live in Oxford.
Of course,
we have major hospitals in Oxford. Some of the best in the country, I can say.
Yeah.
And because we live in the type of city that we live in, which is one of the most expensive in the country, we need to give those doctors and nurses and whatever workers that we've got the wage to be able to buy a property in this godforsaken bloody city. It's so expensive here. You know, everything's crumbling. The infrastructure's crumbling, the roads, you've got traffic, it's a bad problem in Oxford.
Okay.
You can't get a car parking space in any of the hospitals. Traffic is terrible. Everything's expensive.
But you thought that Brexit was going to solve all that?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
The reason why I voted for Brexit, one of the reasons was because I want some of our money to be put back into our own country to try and make things better in this country.
Do you know how much we spent? How much of our budget we spent to the EU per year? You know how much it is.
You know something? I'm not going to lie. I don't know about these things. Okay. I read the information. I listen to what everybody's talking about.
It's 1% of all the money that we spend. Per person, it costs us £123 a year.
Yeah. There's a lot of money that gets wasted on things in this country.
Okay.
You know, stuff that's supposed to happen doesn't happen.
Okay.
And then you find out that millions of pounds have been spent on one thing and then it stops. And it's like, There's a lot of stuff that money gets wasted in this country, I think.
Okay, Teresa, I've got to leave it there because I've got to go to the news. And also, Jamie East is right here. And Jamie, you've got 20 seconds.
Okay, fine. We're going to be talking about the car park price at the hospitals in Oxford.
No, you're not.
No, we're not. It's TV, music and film, of course.
TV, music and film. We come in with a bottle of chocolate milk. I like it.
Hey, it's the
Old
chocolate
school.
milk gang. Yeah, you got to get involved.
Old school. What should I be watching?
Tonight, War of the Worlds, I'm a Celebrity.
I don't watch I'm a Celebrity.
Oh,
I'm
mate,
sorry.
you've got to do it.
No, I can't do it. Don't.
Why? It's one of the best reality shows.
The Crown?
The Crown's on Netflix now, yeah.
And
that's
we
all
like
good.
his Dark Materials as well.
We do like that, yes.
We've got to go. That's it. That's the end of the show. Jamie East, after the 1 o'clock news, I shall be back here doing it all again from 4 o'clock on Saturday.
This is
Talk Radio.
The Alexis Conran Show on Talk Radio with the Times and the Sunday Times. Know your times.
You're in leakage, you're in leakage. You're in leakage, you're in leakage. You're in leakage. You're in leakage, you're in leakage.
Kenna, men.
Cage.
Pants and pads.
You're
discreet.
Leak.
Masculine.
You're right.
Secure absorption zone. Buy online or in shops.
You're
Tenna men. Keep control.
You're in?
No.
Book your seat this November for the chance to win some amazing football prizes with Hyundai. Go to football.hyundai.co.uk and register to test drive a Kona, Kona Hybrid, Tucson or Santa Fe from Hyundai's range of SUVs, and you could win an unforgettable football experience, including a VIP trip to Madrid to watch Atletico take on Villarreal and tickets to top Chelsea games. Book your seat. Find out more at football.hyundai.co.uk. 18 plus, terms apply.
At Lidl, we're big on getting in the Christmas spirit with our award-winning 8-year-old Queen Margot blended Scotch whisky for just $12.99 and our award-winning range of Hortus Artisan gins and gin liqueurs from only $9.99. Big on a Christmas you can believe in. Now that's big on quality and always Lidl on price. Subject to availability, selected stores excludes an eye.
Across the UK, online and on DAB.
We are
Talk Radio. Across the UK, online and on DAB.
Talk Radio on the hour news headlines.
From the Sky News Centre at 1. Prince Andrew's PR advisor Jason Stein has quit after the Duke of York's decision to give a TV interview which has been branded disastrous. He revealed he continued his friendship with disgraced paedophile Jeffrey Epstein because he wanted to know more about business. Author Angela Levin claims the royal came across as arrogant.
It was appalling. I think he wasn't prepared properly. I think people who work for the royals often don't have the courage to tell them they're doing something wrong or how to deal with something. He knows best, and he behaved in a ridiculous way.
The Conservatives are promising to cut down on immigration if returned to power, with the vast majority of people requiring a job offer to come to the UK. Labour's Shadow Health Secretary John Ashworth, who's refused to say whether he wants immigration to go up or down after Brexit, has attacked the Tories' plans.
That is not a sensible way to run an immigration system. You run an immigration system based on the needs of your economy and the needs of sectors in your economy. So as we know in the NHS, we've